All right, so here we are. This is our first episode of Persuasion Check. It's a little new of a format for us. This is a show. Right. So here we are. This is our first episode of Persuasion Check. No good. Okay. Sorry about that. See, technical difficulties. We're going to sort all this out.
Always technical difficulties.
You know. Yep. But so this is a show that Bill had kind of approached me with. We didn't have a name for it months ago, though, right?
Yeah, it's been a while. I think it's been since I first started seeing your live streams. Like I'll be really honest with you, right? I've been subscribed to your channel forever, right? But never, never really went back through and watched your videos, caught them when they would come up in my feed, but never actually looked for it. And then I caught a few of your live streams and I was like, oh man, this guy he's much better live than he is on video. And that's not to say anything about, it's just, you have a great personality, a lot of charisma. And so it carries over much more, I think, in the live than, because I'm not really one for scripted videos, and that's that's not a judgment against anybody that's doing scripted videos. I just like sort of the back and forth. And so in your live stream, I thought it was really cool. And that's when I really started following Master the Game. So yeah.
It's probably because I'm somebody who, like, no topic is off limits for the most part.
Right.
Like, I'll voice my opinion, and if you disagree, I'm okay with it. Like, it does not ruin things typically.
Right. And you're kind of a smartass, right? A little sort of sarcastic, kind of a shit stirrer, which is cool 100%. Though. Like I dig that. So yeah.
100%. Yeah, for sure. So you don't like scripted videos? You're gonna love my 3 videos coming out then soon. They're on your favorite game system too.
I know. So I told you a little bit yesterday. So, like, spoiler, right? I am going to be playing some Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I never thought that I would, but got invited by a group that I play with to play, and I was like, okay, so I guess Bartholomew B. Sparkle is going to live, and he's going to live in Pathfinder. So I mean, if there is any system to create my dual wielding dervish of death, Bartholomew B. Sparkle, the goblin, I think it's going to be in Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's the only core rule book that has goblins, I think. Of any game out there that I mean, there's probably something out there, but I don't know of it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear about that game, definitely, especially since we were talking about a week ago on while we were doing a stream with mini painting, and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I can't wait till Bill makes this. I was looking forward to seeing it in Tyranny of Dragons, and now here we go. We're going to see it elsewhere.
Well, you might, to be honest, if Saul bites it, you might end up seeing him. I'll see how I can build him in 5e, right? Like, because you can. I think is it Volos that allows you to play goblins? So. One of the 5e books allows you to play a goblin. So yeah.
With every book that's come out for 5e, I've kind of gotten away from it a little. Like every single book that's come out, I'm like, oh, there's some cool stuff, but I don't read them like I did when they first, back in 2015 and 16, I was up on it.
So I do. I read them all. I buy them all. I collect them all. I don't get me wrong. I'm sitting, I'm repping OSR, right? Like, I'm repping old school games. And quite frankly, I am pre 3rd edition, not post 3rd edition, right? But what I'll say is 5th edition, to me, it is a great edition. I have a lot of love for this game because it's reminiscent of old school games, right? Like, I think that 4th edition pushed people's buttons so hard that WotC sort of did a reset, and they actually came back to this book, right? Like, 5th edition reminds me a lot of sort of, and not even necessarily AD&D, but more that BECMI D&D, right? They brought back morale, even though it's optional. They didn't necessarily get rid of feats, but they made feats optional, allowing you to get rid of that. Like, there were a lot of things that were throwbacks to sort of that pre 3rd edition style. So
yeah, and I can't wait till we do talk about 5e in a few weeks. Because I think we can have some really interesting talks on that. I love 5e. It was my go-to system for 5 years now. I'm getting away from it because I'm just not as inspired to play it. Running it's great. It's a great system to run, but to play it, there's not a lot that inspires me anymore. You know, I've got 1 or 2 characters I want to make, and after that, I think I'm done playing it.
I don't even necessarily know that that's the system though. Like what else
It's
that
not
could
fully.
just
It's not.
right, it could just be burnout. Like you play a game for so
Yeah.
long that you just want to try something new to try something new. So.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly it. Like Paula does not realize how many characters I've played.
Right.
In case anyone out there doesn't know who Paula is, she's my wife. We bring her on streams on the Master of the Game YouTube channel. She paints miniatures. She plays in a lot of my games. But she didn't always play in my online games. And so back in 2014 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18, I played hundreds of D&D games and made new characters for a lot of them. And so I went through a ton. She has no idea. She'll always tell me, you haven't played this. And I'm like, oh, actually, I did. I have a folder that's like this thick of all the characters I've played in 5e alone. So
is Paula's preferred system 5e, or does she prefer so she was a 2nd edition player, right? Like, so does what system does Paula prefer?
She used to be 2e. Like when I met her, she had played other games, I guess. But when in talking to her, she never knew anything about any of the games. Like she couldn't tell you what games they were. It was kind of one of those things where she had friends that were playing it. She'd go and show up and then just sit down and play and roll the dice when she was told to. She's not as diehard, right? She's more casual. But she got me into 2nd edition D&D in 2010. That got me away from Palladium books. And 2nd edition was her preferred system until 5e came out. She preferred.
So what did you think? What did you think of 2nd edition? How long did you play 2e?
So we played, I think we've played 3 or 4 2e campaigns together.
Right.
One of them, maybe 2 of them she DM'd, and 2 of them her brother DM'd for us. The one that he DM'd for us had like a little bit of Keep on the Borderlands. I remember like it being in like the Duchy or something. I don't know. I don't remember a ton about
Grand Duchy of Karamikos.
Yes,
right.
Yes, Karamikos. Yep.
Yeah.
In Mystara, right?
The known world. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I remember that stuff. But so she liked it a lot. But I don't think so the games we've played with like her brother and things like that are very different than the games we've played with other people we know online. And I don't think before me she had ever played a game that had a lot of heavy role play or a lot of in-character stuff, right?
Gotcha.
If you play with her brother, he runs things more he tries to run things realistic. Like if in his mind it does not make sense, you will suffer some sort of penalty. Like for instance, all the things I've told you about. Like if I jumped off my horse, oh, you're going to take falling damage. I'm like, but I'm trying to do something cool. Or like trying to slide down a snowy bank on my shield. Oh, well, you're out of control because it's not meant for that. You wipe out and get hurt. Like all these things that bothered me because that's not what I'm used to.
Right. So that is kind of the crux of the difference when we're talking post 3E, post 3rd edition versus pre 3rd edition, right? Yes. So pre 3rd edition, it is a grittier game. It's a more realistic game. It's a game that's based more in realism. Yes. I think so. Here's what I think, and like we'll kind of jump into this later. But what I think is the OSR style games, and certainly all games pre 3rd edition, right? Before the actual D20 system, right? Yep. Before the introduction of feats, before 2E introduced skills, but it wasn't as crazy, right? And so what I'm saying is, it wasn't. You were not assumed to be a hero, right? Like you were not superhuman. You start your character
as nothing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Your character survival was the goal, and certainly survival itself was a reward, right?
Right.
And so I think that's probably the mindset that he's approaching it from. Now, will I say that that's a good mindset or not? I think it depends on your group, right? Like I actually prefer my game preference style, because I come from that era, is a gritty, grimdark, like you are struggling to survive, right?
Yeah.
That is my preference. But you don't want to force players to go through that if that's not their preference, right?
I mean,
ultimately, you want your players to have fun, and you can certainly, you can adapt style. Does that mean that you have to completely bastardize the game or that you have to nerf the game? No, I don't think so. I think that it just requires a little creativity. So, which brings me to my point. I think pre-third edition games required a lot of trust in Dungeon Master, and it required a lot of skill to be a Dungeon Master, right? Because there were not all of these mechanics. Everything was kind of a judgment call, right? And most of it was accomplished with the roll under mechanic, right? Like, so you would take the stat and roll under. You achieved, not, with a modifier if you needed to, depending on how hard it was. But anyone could do anything, right? Like, sentient beings, humans, right? Like, primarily in old school, you don't come with prerequisites, right? Like, you don't have 3 things that you can do and that's all you can do, right? Like, you could do realistically anything. Is it going to be easier for some people than it is for others? Yeah, sure. Like, but that's based on your stats, and that's what that roll under mechanic is. So but it required a lot of trust in the Dungeon Master. And I think that there were a lot of DMs that were sort of power crazy back in the day.
Sure.
And they had the DM as God mentality. And then I think that much like 5e was a backlash against just the craziness of the fourth edition, I think that third edition, as the editions rolled out, and by the time we got to 2.5, which was really all the splat books, and 2.5 is not a real thing, but there was a second edition book that came out, and all the splat books that came out. I think that there was a need and a call from the community to start clearly defining what players can and can't do, because DMs were just making judgment calls across the board and no 2 games were the same. And so, like, you could sit at a game where your DM was a real cock, and like you had no, essentially, if there's no rule for it, so it's the DM's call. Third edition attempted, and third edition and on, I think they attempt third edition through fourth edition, right? So third edition, 3.5, fourth edition tried to define everything. And I think that was the advent of the rules lawyer, first of all. But I also
you don't think you had that before that?
Not to the extent. Not to the extent, because there weren't as many rules. That's my whole point. I think that players used those rules as protection against evil
2E
DMs.
made me a rules lawyer. I never used to argue rules until playing 2E with my wife's brother as the DM.
So I think that all of those rules and having everything clearly defined was protection against the evil DM, the DM is God mentality. I think it went a bit too far, and I think people realized it, and that's why 5e, pulled back so hard. And then what 6th edition is going to be, who knows? But
we're like 10 years right now.
I don't know. I think it's in production right now.
Oh, I'm sure they're working.
I really do. No, I mean like soon, right? I think soon. Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
Think so. I don't think with the number of sales they're doing, I don't feel that way. They've got a good thing with 5e with sales, and that's what it's about, man.
No, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think, though,
there's so much they can still do with it.
It
was originally meant to be modular,
and it's probably not.
They never did that part of it.
I think that it's probably, it has more to do with the politics behind the game than anything else. So I do think that you're going to see, if you don't see,
they have a book coming out that changes that already.
It's coming right. If you don't see 6th edition, you're going to see 5.5. Right? Like, I think you are. I just think you are.
I'll agree with that. And the only reason I agree with that, not even politics based, because when 5e first came out, or when it was about to come out, Mike Merle said the intent of it is that here's your core rulebook, player's handbook. And they even said they were going to start with the Dungeon Master Guide, layering on optional things. And the plan was they were going to do more of that to make it a modular system, so you could craft it to be more like 3.5 if you like that. 4.
So they've already done that, though, right? Yeah, like, what I mean is what they like. So if you think, like, again, Volos, or each one of these books offers new options. I do think,
but they don't offer new rules like they implied, and that was the thing they implied. It was going to be a modular rule set. And
why would you want new rules? And I do think that it is. I think it is a modular rule set, though. I do think that
it's definitely intended
with every new sort of unearthed arcana book, and they don't call them unearthed arcana books. but they are, right? Yeah. Like they're really
like
just
Xanathar's
sort of taking
guide and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
that was a good book. That should have came out with the core book.
That is that's a modular rule set, right? Like they're floating the rules via UA, and then the ones that are playtested and do well, then they put into a book and they make it part of the game. Mm-hmm. I think it already is modular, and I do think that they're adding additional rules with multiple books that come out. Right. So
like I just don't feel like they've lived up to what they said they were going to do at the start by making it modular. I think the intent was there was going to be a lot more optional rules they were going to stack up.
So let's just talk, but let's talk about that for a second, because you are big on that, right? Like you, rules equals options.
I don't
right?
Optional rules in a I want to know if I'm sitting down to play a game, this is the game I'm playing. I don't want to sit down and be like, well, here's the basic rules, right? Or the starter rules. We'll just call them starter rules because I don't want to get it confused with other stuff. So here's like your starter rules. Oh, and if your group wants this, well, here's a book that's going to elaborate on all these types of rules. And these are the new rules you can put into it. I don't want that because, again, then when you deal with a rules lawyer, now you have so much ahead of time before a campaign starts. You need to say, well, we're using these rules. We're not using these ones. Like, I don't want that. You know what I mean?
So then why are you saying that they haven't lived up to their promise of
it's not
a modular rule set?
Because so it's not that they haven't lived up to the promise of it being a modular rule set. I think, based on what Mike Merle said back in 2014-15, that the Player's Handbook was an entry-level point, and then they were going to have multiple books come out that had a lot more things that you put on top of it. So maybe Advantage is one thing, right, that is all-encompassing of 5e. But I think there were going to be situational things. I think there were going to be more feats. I think they were going to add a lot more originally. And I think that the popularity of 5e slowed that down. I don't think they put out as much as they said they were.
So my question, but again, though, what I'm saying is, right? Like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that they are. I think that Xanathar
I'm not saying they aren't. I just don't think
definitely new rules. I think Volos was new rules. I think that this Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is all just a UA book, right? Like, so you're saying there's not enough of that, but you're also,
I'm not saying
so out of one side of your mouth, you're saying, like, I don't want all these because I want the rules to be sort of set in stone, but then you're also saying that you want to see more UA.
So you're confusing my opinion with what I think D&D was intending with 5e.
Oh, gotcha.
So 5e, again, the popularity of it the first year, I think they went, wait, we have something. I didn't think they expected it to be that popular. And I think that they then slowed that roll. You know what I mean? They're like, let's not make it as modular as we were originally planning.
So I disagree. I absolutely, and I'll tell you why. I think so. 4th edition saw more books than and so I think, again, the backlash against that, I think that 5e, I think that when they came out with 5e and when they play tested 5e, when it was just D&D next, and I think that their whole entire marketing strategy was, we're going to put out 1 or 2 books a year, right?
Yeah,
like, that's all we're going to do. That's all we're going to do. Sure. And moreover, I do think that we're going to pull back, right? Like we're going to pull back from these heavy options, right? I think that was the plan, and I think it worked fantastically well. And I'll tell you something else.
I agree.
I think they did know. I think they knew. And I think that they knew that 5e was going to be popular based on the playtest. It was also playtested longer than any other version of D&D ever created. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. I think they knew. I think they knew they had something. I think they knew they had lightning in a bottle. And the
playtest was so much different than what ended up coming out. Because I was playing the playtest and downloading each one, and like I remember having these really cool abilities in there, and they got rid of those. And
but they got rid of that. But that's my whole point. Like, we were right. They put out the playtest material, and then they got feedback, and people were like, "We don't want 4e. I don't want daily powers. I don't want all of this bullshit."
Yeah.
Like, and I think that then that got pulled back, but I think based on the popularity of the playtest and based on the feedback that they got, so I come from a marketing background, right? Yeah. Like, and I'm telling you, if you test something for 2 years and you're getting feedback, you can tell. You know how popular something's going to be or how not. You can tell, right? And so I think they knew they had lightning in a bottle. but I also think that it was probably they put everything that they had into it because with the failure of 4E, and I'm not saying, look, man, whether you like 4E
failure
or you don't
is
like
based
4E,
on sales, not based on the quality of the product.
Exactly, yes. Right. After the failure of 4E, I'm pretty sure that Hasbro said to Wizards of the Coast, look, if you can't do something with this, we're done, right? Like this is it. It's done. We're going to sell the IP. We're going to focus on Magic, and that's it, right? Because 4E, monetarily and financially, D&D as an IP at Wizards of the Coast, at Hasbro, worst selling version.
Oh, I know that. I just never heard the actual numbers. I know 5E has outsold all previous editions combined.
So you can Google it and you can see, you can absolutely see how abysmal 4E was. Not only was 4E abysmal in terms of financials, right? 4E legitimately divided the community, and it was hated. It wasn't even that it was like, and again, I'm not saying it was a bad game or a good game, right? Like, I'm not saying that at all.
I've never played it.
What I'm saying is there was a large percentage of the role-playing game community that freaking hated 4E. Like to the point where there were still flame wars over 4E.
They've worked in some of the mechanic. Like, I don't think people realize this who didn't play 4E, but they've worked in some 4E mechanics into 5E. Pathfinder second edition has quite a bit of 4E influence, but it doesn't feel like 4E because of how they've done other things.
So that's what. Okay, they worked 5E. The reason, and this is why I'm saying 5E is essentially they took the best mechanics from all the systems and put them together and said, okay, here's your system, right? Like this is,
and everybody's happy about it.
And that's why I'm saying 5E to me is reminiscent of
the one you love,
third edition, right? Yeah, right.
Because that's the part you see, and you're like, yes,
without question, 100%. And so what I'm saying is, so they did take 4E mechanics. 4E was not necessarily hated, from what I can tell, right? From what I can tell, 4E is not hated necessarily because of the mechanics. 4E is hated almost universally because it is gamist. What I mean by that is
it's MMO,
it's the language. Right. It's absolutely the language. Like
DPS
it's sort of it basically what it did was,
and it's a slog from what I've heard.
It stopped it from being an RPG, right? Like they stopped addressing it like this is a fantasy world to like this is a game, and these are they completely and totally owned that it was this is a game.
People who like the board games love it because of 4E rules in the board games. They love
people don't want, but like people who are playing a medieval fantasy game, they want to hear flowery, cool language. They don't want just sort of like straightforward, this is what it is, and this don't call it a freaking controller. It's a wizard, right? Like don't and people hated it. Like people hated it, or
it was too balanced too. I heard everything was way too balanced. Everyone could pretty much do the same stuff. Like I'm
not a huge fan of balance, and I never have been. And again, that's because sort of pre-third edition, there was balance.
Do you think it's how you started?
There was no such thing as.
Do you think if Bill Roll Stats was born in the early 90s and all you knew was 3.5 till now, do you think you would have different preferences?
No, yes and no, and I'll tell you why. I'll be fair, right? Like here's the thing: 60% of what anybody feels about the game about the system that brought them into RPGs, it's nostalgia. It's nostalgia, right? Like, so if there are people who started in 4th edition and they think it's the greatest game in the world, they're like, oh, this is the greatest game in the world because it's what they're nostalgic for. Well, because it's
I would love to play it.
You'll meet them in like 5 years or 10 years. Like it's too early to be nostalgic yet, right? So, but like nostalgia will certainly come back, and nostalgia plays a huge part of it. But here's what I will say. It's 100% what I will say. Again, we started this conversation with me saying that I love 5th edition, right? Like I think that 5th edition is a great system.
We agree on something.
But wait, now listen, and this is why I tell you that my feelings wouldn't change. If I were to come into the game in 5th edition, I would have played it for about 2 or 3 years, 4 years, and I'd start looking for something grittier because, right? Like I do like 5th edition, but I find myself drawn back to, to this, right? Like I find myself drawn back to something that's grittier, something that's more grimdark,
And
something where the stakes,
nostalgia.
something where no, that's not nostalgia. That's simply the game that I prefer, right? Like if I would have came into the system in 3.5, I think that immediately I would play it, and then I would start looking for something. I don't want to say more realistic because it's a freaking fantasy game, right? But I would say that I would start looking for something where the stakes are higher, where I'm not, here's the difference. Like,
did you feel like the stakes were high Saturday when 2 cats died and a character died?
So yes, I do. Okay, so here's the thing though, right? Like I do feel like the stakes were high. I'm not saying that you can't die in 5e, especially at lower levels. What I am saying is this, right? I think post 3rd edition, the game is character build. What I mean is you're going through and you're building the right feats and the right character options. And even as you go through and level up, you have to pick the right feat and take the right ABI and all of these things, right? So the game is, the skill is in building a character that can succeed, right?
I agree. That's not how I build characters.
Well, listen, in pre 3rd edition, there is no skill or feat that you can take. The skill in the game, the skill in the game, the way that you win the game is through smart play. After 3rd edition, it's smart build. Before 3rd edition, it's smart play. And I think that's the difference. That's the difference in the two games. Like
I think in players,
I believe that.
So I understand where you're going with that, and I agree and I disagree. So I agree exactly with what you're saying, that on the surface that's what it is, and you see it in the way people play newer games. People that didn't play some of those games, they rely too much on their builds and stand there and hit something. People that use tactics can take things a lot further. In fact, so one of the cool things back in 2015 that we did in the one-shot group is we started so we challenged someone who said, I can make deadly encounters with the weakest monsters for your level 20 parties. And they went through and did it because they used tactics with monsters, whereas the players did not. And they actually put up a strong fight with weak little goblins and all this stuff against like a high level party, and using traps. And, they weren't out to kill the players, obviously. They were out to prove a point. And I've been able to do similar things, except I go the opposite. I do use more powerful monsters and force certain players to think smarter and not just rely on what spells they have and what weapons they have.
Right.
But yes, I agree with you in the sense that it has molded people a certain way.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about specific groups. I'm not talking about specific people. I'm saying the approach to the game, just the feel of the game in general, right? The feel of the game in general. If we're looking at the majority of the way that people play the games, and this is the point that I was trying to make the other day, it's a completely different game.
Every game is different.
No, you're missing my point. Every game is different. What I'm saying is 3rd edition forward is a completely different game, all of them, than
it is drastically different than 2nd and before. Edition. I agree.
It's not the same game. The game that we play today is not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons, or at least Dungeons and Dragons as it was intended. And I don't mean that like to say that it's better.
So who are we talking about? Are we talking about Gygax, or are we talking about somebody else? I don't want to get you on that rant. I don't want to get you on that rant.
I think that we're more we're talking probably
Arneson.
We're talking about Gygax and Arneson, right? Like I'm not like, no disrespect to Mr. Gygax at all, right? But the idea of leveling, the idea of playing an individual character, the idea of playing through a campaign, the idea of actually voicing and role playing, those are all Arneson ideas. Like, and Gygax, that's fact. Google that. Like Gygax admits that, right? So yeah,
I know that.
So
I don't know a whole lot about all that stuff back then between those two, but I know that much. So
right.
I have the Art and Arcana book, and I've been reading it, and it's interesting hearing how things came up from the beginning and stuff.
Well, so it's, before we can even start talking about this, right? Like, if you'll indulge me, it is actually probably worth going through what this game is, why this game is here, and
Sure.
you know, why it exists, as opposed to this game, right?
Sure.
Okay, so right. So obviously, and all of these, you know, I have strong opinions on all of this, and I will certainly, you know, when it is a fact, I will state it as a fact. When it is conjecture and or my opinion, I will let you know that it is conjecture and or my opinion, right? And I encourage you, you know, don't take my word for it, right? Like, don't take Juice's word for it. Go out and look it up.
Oh no, you need to follow the Church of Juice and take
after
my
the
word.
stream, or after the stream, or during the stream. Hit me up. I am at RollSats on Twitter. I will send you a link, right? Like, put hashtag Persuasion Check. I'll send you a link. You can check out everything that I am saying that I'm claiming is fact, right? So here's the thing. Specifically, when we're talking about the Rule Cyclopedia, the Rule Cyclopedia is BECMI, right? Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, and Immortal, which is a completely different system, and quite frankly, an underappreciated system compared to this system, which is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons.
So to be clear, BECMI is a combined, like, multiple tier
system
into one.
I'm totally, and that's why it's so awesome. And I'm going to go through this. We're going to go through exactly why this is. Why do these two divergent lines, these two parallel lines of Dungeons and Dragons exist? Because way back in the day, right? Essentially, Gary Gygax was a wargamer, right? We all know this. Dave Arneson was a wargamer. Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax came up, and with also
Arneson,
Dave Wesley. Wesley, who is completely and totally, like, just forgotten, and
he's mentioned in the Art and Arcana book a little bit.
I feel really bad for the guy, right? But like, they came up with this idea that we'll take wargaming and we'll turn it into role playing. In other words, we're going to, instead of focusing on groups of 10, 20, 100, it's going to be one guy versus one guy, sort of gladiatorial, right? And you know, Arneson was sort of playing it this way. Gygax saw it and said, "Hey, this is going to be great. This is a great idea for a game. Let's release this game," right? Like, so they do. TSR releases OD&D, which is original D&D, in the white box or the brown box. Mm-hmm. So they go along for a while. Arneson, who lived in Minnesota at the time, wasn't even in Lake Geneva, decides to move to Lake Geneva, and he joins TSR. He's at TSR for about 10 months, and does nothing. Like, really produced nothing. And I will say, you know, he did, but I think that I think even at that point, they were already starting to brew with, you know, creative differences, right? Like, they weren't seeing eye to eye on things. After about 10 months, Arneson quits, leaves TSR. However, right, he still has his hands in the IP, right? Like, so he still gets royalties. He still gets money from this. Well, Gygax comes up with the idea, I'm going to come up with a whole new game, like, because it was called Dungeons and Dragons, right? So then Gygax was like, well, I'm going to come up with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which is totally not the same thing, right? Like, this is totally, completely different product. And what the book that came out, and the book that started it all in 1977, this book came out. This is actually the first book that came out, the Monster Manual. Before the Player's Handbook, before the DM's Guide, the Monster Manual in 1977 came out. There is no mention of Dave Arneson in this book at all.
It's fascinating how they did the art and stuff for that too. Like, I love that stuff. Sorry.
Yep. So that book comes out in 1977, and Arneson gets no money, zero money, and he's not even mentioned. Then in 1978, this book came out, right? And there is a mention of Dave Arneson in here, but it's just like a thanks along with 20 other people who sort of like play tested. And again, he got no money. So in 1979, Dave Arneson sues TSR. Fact. Also, all of this is fact, and you can look it up. You can see the actual, you can download the actual
like
legal paper
and stuff,
right?
Books about it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they yada yada yada. Long story short,
drink.
Arneson is asking for 5%. Hey, I want 5%. I want 5% of like everything that TSR publishes that has anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons. Gygax counters with, hey, I tell you what, instead of giving you 5% of these three books, right, because they were only planning on coming out with the Advanced Dungeon Masters and Monster Manual, instead of giving you 5% of these three books, I'll give you 2.5% royalties on the Dungeons and Dragons line. Like, and as long as TSR is in business, we will publish Dungeons and Dragons. It will be separate than Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but we will publish these two parallel lines, Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And that's when this came out, right? Like, well, Blue Box actually first, but you get the point. And so this is why we're going down this story. So there is this perception that because this is basic, that this is a lesser game than this, has absolutely not, like basic advanced has nothing to do with each other other than really smart marketing, right? Okay, so Gygax pushing advanced because he knows he's getting all the money from this. He doesn't have to give Arneson any royalties. He only has to give Arneson royalties on things with the Dungeons and Dragons name. First of all, it doesn't promote this game at all. Like they don't like everything is advanced. And even in the basic stuff, it's like, hey, switch to advanced, buy advanced, do advanced. Like, and that's by design, right? Like that leveling structure, it's like, okay, you start at basic and then you move on to advanced and you buy all of the advanced stuff. Like that's just smart, right? Like that's just corporate greed.
That was him cutting out the other guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and the same thing, sort of like basic, expert, companion, master, immortal. The reason that these were initially released in box sets is because you can continue to charge. Like, in other words, once you make it past third level, you got to buy a whole new box, right? Like, and then once you make it past 14th level, you got to buy a whole new box. And then like so they were box set releases.
I actually like box sets.
And they weren't promoted, they weren't like marketed, they were this unknown D&D system. And so people think like, oh, it's basic because it's like little kiddie. No, it's actually, I think, a better system than the advanced system. And also, what I will say is this is much truer to original D&D or OD&D than advanced ever was.
So chainmail?
No, not chainmail. Chainmail was essentially miniature wargaming, right? Like they kind of shoehorned that in. No, Arneson fixed that. Right. So, but like, but that was, again, that was by design. That was because they sort of wanted to cut poor Dave Wesley and certainly Dave Arneson out of. And again, I'm not, look, man, this is not me bashing Gary Gygax. I think Gary Gygax was a freaking genius, right? But I also think that Arneson was a genius, and I think that Dave Wesley was a genius, but I just don't think that they get any credit, right? Like, I mean,
they don't.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things, they don't.
But it's the same thing. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think that this game, right, like BECMI gets the credit it deserves like this game does. And what I'll say is, just because this game has basic in its name, BECMI basic.
Do you think that's it? Because I've never thought of basic as lesser than advanced D&D. I know I joke with you when I'm on stream and I'm like, oh, it's basic, like, you know, because it's fun.
I think everyone does, and I think even at the time, so you know, I was playing in the 80s. I started playing at 13 years old. I started playing with this basic set. I think even at the time that the box set didn't get as much love as the advanced book, right? Like, because it's a hardback book. It's taken seriously. It's more like there was a
they made less on purpose. They also didn't promote it. So that's, I feel like, the real crux of it all.
So what happened is, so then once all of that was done, and then in 91, right? Like 10 years later, right? They finally put all of the box sets, because the run was essentially done. TSR at this time was done. They were already in negotiation with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast to be purchased, right? Like, they were done. They had made their money. So then they had to keep, but you got to remember, they had to keep a Dungeons and Dragons game in print and give Dave Arneson his 2.5%. So they created this book. Less than a year later, about a year later, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, purchased the IP, the Dungeons and Dragons IP. They paid off Dave Arneson for an undisclosed amount so that he would no longer get 2.5% royalties. And that's why third edition came out as Dungeons and Dragons again. That was the first
in 2000, right? Or 99 or something.
That was the first Dungeons and Dragons game again. You know, like, this was then done. They didn't have to pay Arneson.
So I'm not real familiar with how things unfolded in the 90s at all. So when Wizards of the Coast or whatever bought it, did they just continue to run second edition under the Wizards of the Coast banner then?
So second edition, their thing was the D20 system, right? Like they were coming out with the D20 system, and they wanted that open gaming license, right? Like the OGL. That was their big thing was, okay, we're gonna create this. We're gonna release this open gaming license, and we're gonna allow people to create all sorts of supplements and different like settings and things of that nature, which was.
But that was like 7 years after they purchased it, I thought.
Was a good idea and a bad idea.
Sure.
Right? Like, both, I guess what I'm saying is, I think, and then they tried
for
to.
Us. It was terrible for
right.
them.
And then they tried to roll it back, and then it was too late. I think that once they opened up the floodgates, and I don't like. It remains to be seen whether. And not from a gaming perspective. I think from the gaming community, the OGL was probably the greatest thing that ever happened, right? Like from a financial perspective, from a business standpoint,
it hurt.
I think, I don't necessarily think that it was the best idea in the world, and I really don't know what they were thinking at that time. But who knows? It couldn't. Here's what I will say: say what you want about Wizards of the Coast, say what you want about Hasbro. Nobody ran that company. Nobody did a worse job of publishing, promoting, and marketing Dungeons and Dragons than TSR, like ever. I mean, like TSR was just an awful shit show of a company.
Well, it started in like a garage, and then it moved to a place downtown. But
it was so bad. The Blooms completely and 100%, like they destroyed that company, right? And Gary Gygax.
You see that with companies now, though.
For all intents and purposes, Gary Gygax let it happen, right? Like he sold majority share, which was stupid. And like, if I'm sure if he could go back in time, he would undo that. And again, this is not me bashing on Gary Gygax. Gary Gygax is great. I think that, I don't necessarily know that somebody who is a creative genius is necessarily a financial genius, right? Like, and so that's why you hire people.
Well, and you see that in all RPGs, I feel like they have. So what I feel in talking to people in the industry before, there's a lot of limiting beliefs as to how big you can get as an RPG company. And it kind of bothers me because I think you can get a lot bigger. And D&D right now is showing it. They can show what you can do. But obviously they have money behind it. They have a big giant behind them pushing it. But if, like, you see one company do it, other companies can do it. It's just going to take time. It's going to take intelligence and marketing and getting it in the right hands. Like you can do it.
I think that was the genius move, and I think that was and I wouldn't necessarily call it genius because again, I don't necessarily agree with the OGL from a business perspective, but I think the thought process was, okay, if we release the OGL, everybody's going to have to mention us, right? It is sort of like that massive awareness push. Your name gets tagged onto everything. You own it. You're that was a good move, right? Yes. But what I'll say though is like if you're an independent producer, if you're creating content, like if you were tomorrow to be like, you know what, I'm going to set up Master the Game Publications. Look, man, like you're famous on YouTube and shit, but nobody knows who you are, and nobody's going to care. Like, you're not deep. You don't have, like, I guess what I'm saying is you don't have the cachet that the Dungeons and Dragons name does, right? Like, I mean, like, so
but
when
Google didn't have the cachet they have 25 years ago either.
So when you
Amazon 20 years ago,
when you say that like RPGs can get big, and I'm not being facetious here, I'm not trying to be pedantic. Name one that is as big as D&D that hasn't been around.
Call of Cthulhu.
Since D&D.
Oh yeah, you can't because
been around since before D&D.
Right. So you can't because I don't think it's the same. So how do I say this without offending people? Creative people don't tend to have business minds usually. Do you know what I mean?
Like that's what I was just saying. So, but what I'm saying is, when you say you could create an RPG and it could be just as big, I say no, you can't. No, you can't. Or
the same person can't do it by themselves. It's like any business. You should have if you're starting a business because you're a great baker, you're probably not going to be the best at running a business. But if you bring somebody in who knows marketing, who knows social media management, who knows how to run a business to help you, and you guys have good synergy, you can grow that bakery into something good that might 10 years from now, 20 years from now, rival Hostess Twinkies. Like, You know what I'm saying?
I don't think so. No, I'm saying you could have a really great baker, but you're never going to be Betty Crocker. I'm just saying, like, because name recognition is a lot, right? Like,
Sure.
and marketing dollars are a lot, and you're not Hasbro, right? Like,
Sure.
and you're not.
But you see new things pop up all the time, and you see things that had the name recognition die all the time, like Sears, Kmart. Like, things are dying right now. Like, retail's dying in general.
Completely agree, but it's not like there's no new retail things that are coming along to replace that.
No,
right?
but
Like,
digital things are coming along. So you see that right now with gaming too. Like, right now, it's easier now than it was 10 years ago to start your own publishing company. You know what I mean? Because you can do it digitally.
I 100% agree. And look, I'm not arguing. I want to make it very clear.
Sure.
I'm not arguing that independent publishers are not better than WotC. I think they are. I'm an OSR guy, right?
Yeah,
like, I support independent publishers. Yeah. That's my game. I want to play.
So,
basic fantasy is my jam, right? Like, okay, so Dave Gonerman, like, he's not D&D, right? He created an homage to D&D. What I'm saying is, though, with that said, I don't ever think that Dave Gonerman is going to be, or that basic fantasy is going to be bigger than D&D, right?
But eventually, someday, something will be, I guess, is where my point is. And the reason I say that is because look, 12 years ago.
I think Pathfinder took a shot, and
it was close. They dropped the ball.
But what I'm saying is, I think Pathfinder took its shot, but like, it didn't happen, right? Sure. Like, and I would say that Pathfinder is the closest we've ever come to D&D losing the torch, right?
During 4E, they were more popular from a fantasy RPG standpoint. Yeah,
I agree.
I think their model didn't work, and I don't think it works now with how much they put out, because I think people start to get, for example, you're a collection person, right? You have to have it all, but you can't keep up with Pathfinder. I mean, maybe you can, but you don't want to. Because it's so much stuff. Yeah. And it's so expensive to try to play that race. At some point, people get discouraged and they go, I'm never going to be able to do it. And they stop. And then they're like, well, what can I do?
This was my issue with 4th edition. Do you want to know what my issue with 4th edition was?
What's that?
It kind of felt exploitative. What I mean is, like, okay, you're telling me that I have to buy 3 different players' handbooks and 2 different Dungeon Masters guides, and like, you can't just. One of the reasons that I love this book so much is there's everything in this one book. You don't need to buy 300 different supplements. Like, how many books were in the 4E line? Like,
I have no clue.
How many books are in the 3.5 line? Like, you don't need that. And I say this from a collector's perspective. I love these books, right? But like, at some point, it just becomes like, okay, you're just regurgitating information and just trying to get another $40 out of me, right? Like,
yes and no. I think there's still a creative love behind what they're putting out. You know, like, so I don't think, in some cases that's not true, but I think in a lot of cases people still love what they're coming up with. Or I hope they do. I hope people aren't just working and doing it for a buck, to be honest, because I don't think RPGs are the industry you should be in for that.
No, I don't. Not right now. And I think bottom line is, right, like, if you want, I guess what I'm saying is, if you really want to be a successful individual and you want to make a lot of money and you don't want to struggle, then do anything but RPGs. Like, and I say that with the utmost respect for independent RPG creators. Right. So on a stream, I don't know, it was a stream like 3 or 4 months ago. I kind of got really upset with someone, and I'm not going to bring it up, but like, there was like, oh, well, I'm just going to go to Google and download the PDF. Well, screw you, man. Like that, like, what I'm saying is, there are people who are feeding their kids based on those. And when you to me, that's kind of awful. This is what I'm saying. I truly 100% support independent creators, as well as just creators in general,
and
right?
This year it's harder in general.
Well, it is. And so I'm saying much love, much respect for what they do, but also you can't go into that thinking you're going to have a successful company, or that you're going to be successful, or that, you're just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just saying, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know that I can agree with that.
So I think, so one last point on the whole thing. So the reason I do think something one day will be bigger than D&D is because 12 years ago, 13 years ago, Facebook was not the behemoth it was. MySpace was. And where the hell is MySpace now? Like, they were the first big social media platform, right?
Yeah.
And they are long gone because somebody botched it. And Facebook filled in because they were innovative and they had the right people, making the right decisions. Now, who knows? I could be wrong. We might not ever see it in our lifetime. I like to stay optimistic about it. And I hope one day it is even more mainstream than it is now to play RPGs. We do have some comments.
I know. I was just going to say. So OJ Flynn 1980 is asking if the print-on-demand rule cyclopedia from Drive-Thru is missing the Immortal set. So the rule cyclopedia in general, not just the print-on-demand. The print-on-demand is exactly the same as the original. It includes the exact same content, but the rule cyclopedia itself never had very limited support for Immortals. The Immortal box set was a very divisive set, even in the day, right?
Why?
Because essentially the characters were immortal at that time. They were completely OP,
gods.
Right? Like it covered not necessarily gods, because there were, in the world of Mystara, in the known world, there really were no gods. There were these immortals, right? These beings that ascended to immortality. So you were almost like godlike, but you were not necessarily a god. They really steered away from religion for whatever factor, and I think it's probably because it's during the Satanic Panic and blah 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 blah. So but no, so I guess OJ Flynn, yes, there is some mention. In other words, you can level that far, but there's really the rule sets that support leveling that high, and the specific immortal paths that you would have to take are not included. You can find the immortal box set online though. Go out on eBay and somebody will sell you a set for their immortal box set. If you're interested
in that.
How much is that
box set?
I did not. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on condition, how complete it is, and all of that other good stuff. I was never necessarily a huge fan of the immortal rules, but that's more because, again, my style and preference of play. I still maintain, man, first to third level is most fun you're going to have in a D&D campaign, because you're scared shitless the entire time. You're legitimately like you're gonna die. You're so fragile. That's what makes it exciting, though, right?
Not me, though. Yeah. So I don't get my excitement from that. So it's fun no matter what. I feel like. So actually, this is funny. You asked me what Paula's favorite system was, and I could tell you 5 years ago it was 2E. It changed to 5E. However, talking to her a couple weeks ago when we were talking about playing either this or another game with you and other people, I asked her the same question that I've asked her before. I said, "So what's your current favorite system?" She doesn't have one anymore. So since playing with me,
her new favorite is going to be this one. I'm telling you right now.
So 100. So she told me that in recent years, it doesn't matter what game she's playing. She's learned that, especially this year, actually, from playing Star Wars. It's the group. It's the people. Yeah. It's the role play. Has nothing to do with rule sets. Has nothing to do with lethality. Options, nothing. It's just as long as she likes the group, she feels like she can get her word in. She loves it. And that made me feel pretty good, because I don't think that ever would have happened if I didn't bring her into online gaming with a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's true. And I think I'm gonna call it right here. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna be her new favorite DM. So
I'll let you have that mantle. That just means you're gonna have to run more games and I'll have to play more games. So.
Hey, I'm good. I'm good with it.
You're gonna have to start running some Pathfinder 2E though, because we're investing in
I will never run. No, and I'm being serious. This is not even me slamming on the system or anything. Sure. I won't run Pathfinder 2nd edition for the same reason I won't run 4th edition for the same reason that I won't run 3.5 or Pathfinder 1st edition. I'll play those games. I'm not running those games. No way. No, you won't catch me running those games, because it's just too much. There's way too much to...
We should save that talk for the Pathfinder video.
Okay.
We should save that.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you. Do you play Pathfinder 1st edition, or you did not? I don't remember.
I ran it and I played it. I did feel overwhelmed.
And so you're now looking through Pathfinder 2nd edition. Are you
not as bad?
are you not feeling anxiety just looking
Not
at
like
that
I used to. No. So
Okay.
so looking at it, so I already know when I start running it, I'm probably going to run it where there's a lot of things I'm going to screw up and run more like 5e. I already know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this time I'm okay with that. I was not okay with that when I ran 1e. I'm also going to try running modules first, something that only until recently I never liked doing.
Right.
And I can't say I necessarily like doing it now, but I'm getting more comfortable the more I do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to learn it because it already offers suggestions for you. But like I said, I've read the core rulebook for Pathfinder 2nd Edition more than I've read any other core rulebook in my life to date.
Yeah.
Right? Like just read it. And so I've ran through scenarios in my head, how it works. And, obviously that doesn't mean I know the system. I don't at all.
I have a snarky response for that.
Go for it.
You've read more of this core rule book than any
Yeah.
other edition because it's 3 times the size.
No, because I haven't read all 600 pages either. No.
Yeah, right.
So I can tell you right now, the D&D 5e Player's Handbook.
Also, OJ Flynn, I totally agree with you. There is no wrong way to play. So I don't care what game. I just want to play and have fun. Yeah.
Speaking of which, if you want to go check out our store, we have a shirt that backs that. It's called Play and Let Play. So
nice.
if you guys want to go and purchase some of those shirts, I will then happily donate one to Bill here with all the proceeds.
So you know what I'm doing? I'm actually creating. I was doing that today. I'm creating shirts for the B2 Keep on the Borderlands game. Everyone's going to get everyone as my gift to all of the play. Everyone's going to get a personalized shirt.
Oh, that's cool, Bill. I love it.
Yeah.
So we agree with the Play and Let Play. So the core rulebook for 5e, never read it cover to cover. Still have not. Still haven't even read some of the spells in that damn book.
It's hard to
once I figured out how to play.
It's hard to read any core book cover to cover, but like that doesn't mean you haven't read the whole thing, right? Like you read it. Really? Okay.
No. So I did the play test stuff. When the game came out, I just kind of played a couple games and then I just started running stuff. I ran Adventures League. So the only time I ever really had to look something up is if there was something I just did not know. Right.
Yeah.
Plus with YouTube and things like that. Plus I made videos. When I make a video, I try to read up on it, on the specific thing. But no, I can't.
You have to write your script.
Oh, I don't write scripts. I've written maybe 5 scripts out of my 900 videos ever, and they suck when I do that, and so I don't do that.
Right.
So, but I'll read straight out of the book sometimes. That's better than a script because now it's straight from where it should come from. But,
that's true.
But yeah, no, I never finished that. The first book, I did not read the whole thing. In fact, if you were to ask me to name feats from 1st edition Pathfinder, I can't name one. And I played a couple games of it. I've ran it, but I can't name a single feat from one. And I'm playing the video game that's based on that, and I still can't name it. You know what I mean? So I have a terrible memory when it comes to stuff. And so for me to do that, it's just hard. But so there are things about the 2nd edition Pathfinder that are difficult for me, and they are a little overwhelming. But at the same time, it's terminology, and that's about all that I feel I need to grasp,
Yeah.
Once I grasp that, it'll be easier. And so like hiding and that part's a little weird for me, but most of the game, it's just like other RPGs for the most part. So
yeah.
There are more rules though. I give you that. 600 pages though isn't necessary for that game, in my opinion. They could have narrowed that down to 350, 400, and I think they could have gotten it across.
So then why didn't they?
Because I don't think that's a well-organized book, first of all.
So then I'm saying,
and it's got a lot of stuff that should be in the Dungeon Master Guide in it as well.
So then I would suggest, then that's just like bad editing, right? And so all of these people that are saying, "Oh my God, it's the greatest."
Sure. No, like everybody you talk to will tell you the same thing. Like if you talk to No Nat 1, who's a huge Pathfinder guy, he says that the layout is the worst part of it, and it's not organized well. The book has a couple contradicting rules in it in the first book, first printing. They fixed it with the errata, but yeah. And you got to remember the way Pathfinder does it is they put a lot of stuff, a lot of extra stuff. Like there's how to craft traps, how to do magic items. Like all that stuff is in the core rulebook too. You can play the game without having crafting rules. You can play the game without trap rules. That could be in the Game Master Guide. you know.
Right.
So the core rule book of 600 pages, because it's really 2 books in one, in my opinion.
Right.
And so that's what makes it, you know, different than others. The only thing it doesn't have is monsters.
I'm going to say something right now, and you're not going to be happy, but I'm going to say
Okay.
it anyway
Go
because,
for it.
like, I want to. Here's what I will say. I think that a 670-page book is way too long, and I, quite frankly,
I agree.
Ain't nobody got time for that. But
Actually,
moreover,
have you checked out the Dragon Age book?
What I will say, yes, I actually have it on my shelf.
I think that's a really well done one.
If we're comparing editions, right? I actually think that the Game Mastery Guide First Edition Pathfinder is probably one of the greatest RPG books ever written, and the Game Mastery Guide Second Edition is wah wah. I just don't. I got nothing out of it. I got 100%. Nothing out of it. So
100% agree. So the only thing, so if you're gonna run Pathfinder Second Edition, there are some systems in the second one that are good, like how to basically improvise for a situation that's not currently in there. With the, what is it called, like something victory points or something. It's like a whole chapter right there. That chapter is very useful. Other than that, I mostly agree with you. And I do agree 600 pages is too much, but I will say the biggest book I have, other than Pathfinder, that I think is the best book I have, is the Dragon Age core rulebook, where it's like that thick, but it's got every single thing you need to play it in it. This book is not small either. And I think that's brilliant. It's a whole system. It's everything you need. It's world info. It's everything.
So this book
it's 300 pages.
300 pages, half the size of the Pathfinder 2A Core Mastery book, but it also contains this is Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, Monsters Manual, and campaign setting. So right.
But the text in this book is significantly smaller.
Yeah, it is.
It's really small.
It really is. Yeah,
and there's not as much art. So I mean,
I will agree.
So there are some things. So I wonder if you were to make it the same type, font size, and everything, and if you had just as much art, I wonder how much bigger this book would be. But,
so here's what I.
But you're right.
But here's what I will say. Here's what they could have done, right? And probably if TSR was actually still investing in this game at all at the time when this was created, you could have made this Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yes.
The font wouldn't have had to be as small. You could add additional art, and I think this would be like, it would have received more love, right? Like, I guess is what I'm saying.
If it had the backing of it, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And so I think when it comes down to it, context matters, right? Is what it kind of comes down to.
100%. Yeah. Right.
So
right.
Okay.
Right.
So let's talk about Rule Cyclopedia.
we're
only an hour and 10 minutes in.
We're an hour in. Yeah. Right.
So where do you want to start, Bill? I mean, so you kind of gave where it's come from, why it came out.
Brief history, where it is, and why it exists, right? So I will tell you why this is legitimately my desert island game, right? Like why this particular system is my desert island game.
So that's if you could take one game to an island, this would be it.
If I could take one book, right, I would take.
Well, that's easy because it's got everything in it.
Yes, absolutely.
I would take Dragon Age.
So here's what I'll say about this particular system. Hey, Bill, is a lot of it nostalgia? Yeah, I think that a lot of it. I think that a lot of it is nostalgia. But moreover, right, aside from just nostalgia, this particular system, and I'm not talking about AD&D, I'm talking about the BECMI system, the BECMI rule system, I think is probably, we talk about sort of editing and layout and sort of the prose that's used, the copy, the text, and even the mechanics. I think pound for pound, dollar for dollar, page for page, this is probably the most elegant system of Dungeons and Dragons that I've ever played, right? And I say that having played a ton of different systems. Now, are you going to ask me, is this the best version of D&D ever made? Conjecture, opinion, yes. In my opinion, yes, it is. I'm not saying that it's the best.
This specific version is the best set of rules?
I think that BECMI is it is absolutely my game of choice, and I think it is probably the best version of Dungeons and Dragons ever created. Does that mean that I'm saying that it is the best version of Dungeons and Dragons for everyone? No, I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
Because like it depends. Like, you know, some people like the math rocks, some people like crunch, some people like builds, right?
Mhm.
And if you're a player who again, if your skill is in building a character but not necessarily in playing a character, then you're probably not going to like this game, right? Like you're not. In fact, you're probably not going to like just OSR
if you had to choose one or the other. I agree.
Or Dungeons and Dragons in general. It's probably not your game, right? You probably should be playing Pathfinder. You probably should be playing something that you know appeals to that. And I'm not saying that's better or worse. I'm saying I don't particularly care for that style of game. And so for me, this sort of scratches the itch. And we had this conversation earlier. Bill, if you would have come into the game at the height of 3.5, if you would have come into the game at the height of 4th edition, at the height of 5th edition, do you think that your preferences would be different? And I still maintain no. I think that I'm looking for rules I think I've always preferred. Even so, 2nd edition to me started getting to be too much. At least 2.5, when all the splat books started to come out, when skills were added, when like I don't necessarily agree. You say that, and I think here's the fundamental thing. You say that though all of those things allow you the ability, you know, options to create the character that you want. What I'm saying is a character, a build is just a set of numbers. That's not a character, right? You make your character, the numbers, your stats, and the feats and abilities don't make the character. You make the character. As a sentient being, as a human or an elf or a dwarf or whatever you are, as a sentient being, you have the ability and the option to do anything, right? You don't need a specific 3 sets of feats or 3 skills that you can do. So you can simply say to the dungeon master, "Hey, Bill, I want to try to find a trap." And I don't care who you are, right? Like, okay, that's cool. That's totally cool, Juice. Roll under your wisdom. And if you roll under, great. And if you roll over, sucks to be you. Like, I mean, what I'm saying is you don't the only limit to your options in old school D&D
is your brain.
Your imagination.
So here's the thing. So I agree with you 100%. But for example, for me, I would never think of a lot of character things without some of the prompts in some of the games I've played. That's the thing. Like, I would not think that, oh yeah, this is something I can do, you know, because I've played 2nd edition D&D, right? And that is like this, does not have a ton of things, you know, that you can do or whatever within mechanics of the game. And so for me, it's less inspiring. Whereas, for example, today, going through my Pathfinder 2e Advanced Player's Guide, I was really inspired multiple times to come up with stuff I never would have come up with if it was just up to me. Does that make sense?
So it does, but don't take this the wrong way. So
that's
not right. That's not a flaw in the system.
I'm not saying it is a flaw in the system.
That's just you being lazy in your creativity and your imagination. Right?
I don't agree with that, but I think so again. But that's one of the things that draws me to those games. Again, I don't have a problem with the system itself per se, except THAC0. Right. I'll tell you right now. Get rid of THAC0 and reverse it, and I'm cool.
Well, okay,
but that's that's the only gripe I have about some of these.
I still don't get this. I still don't understand what you don't understand about.
I already forgot how to do THAC0 again.
It goes down instead of up.
I know it goes down, but how? It's not intuitive for my brain.
It's simple subtraction. Like instead of I don't understand how you can add an ability modifier or subtract an ability modifier from a roll, but you can't simply subtract a number from your armor class.
So okay, hang on. I got a D20. Boom, D20. I have a fighter. I have no idea what I need to roll to hit something because it's a THAC0 chart. It's not just a minus something. You know what I mean? It's literally a THAC0 line, and I don't know what the hell that means. So you're saying you just subtract, right? So, okay, I don't know. I rolled a 17 on the die. That's a bad roll then because now it's say it's a -2, it's a 15. Like, I don't get it, dude. I've tried so hard for 10 years and I don't get THAC0.
Okay,
I don't know why I can't wrap my head around it. Oh, Paula's in the chat right now, it looks like.
I swear to you, it's not that hard. Like, yes, there is a chart,
So
but you don't need the chart. Once you know your 2-hit armor class 0, what is that number? Whatever that number is.
Just give me a number.
2-hit armor class. Well, it depends on what level you are.
I know.
Right?
Just tell me. Like, make something up. Tell me what it is.
Because your that number is going to change. But generally,
I know it does. By level or whatever.
Exactly, by level.
By your class and by other stuff.
Right. So
say it's what, a minus? Is your number a negative number or a positive number?
Generally, your 2. We're not talking about armor class, right? Armor class,
we're talking
goes
about my THAC0, my
to hit armor class 0 is going to be a number. Generally, at level 1, your 2-hit armor class 0 is going to be a 19. It means you need to roll a 19 or better to hit someone with an armor class of 0.
See, that's where it gets confusing. So now it's multiple numbers, though.
So let's say you are fighting a goblin who has an armor class of 7. You know that you need a 19 to hit armor class 0, right? So you subtract 7 from 19, you need a 12 or better to hit that freaking guy. How difficult is that?
That was kind of difficult still for me to process everything going on.
It's not.
Because why do I have a weird set of numbers of 19, whereas then the goblin also has a set? That's what makes it tricky for me. It's not just, hey, I have a +3 and I have to be higher than a number.
It's the same thing when you go up. Everyone has an armor class. Every freaking monster has an armor class, and you have to know what that armor class is to know what you're going to hit, right?
Fired up you get on that.
And then sometimes you have modifiers.
Bill, I've already told you I'm not the most intelligent person in the world.
Sometimes you have like +5. Sometimes you have -2. Sometimes you're doing the same thing in ascending armor class as you do in descending armor class.
So then if you're saying it's the same thing, though, I get that, but it's not. It's clearly not as easy as everyone says, or more people would actually like THAC0 than they do.
Awkwardly nerdy RPGs says to make a chart if you have issues, which is absolutely correct. You can.
I always do.
Yeah,
I always have to. It's in the sheet. Yeah. It's on the sheet in here. It's on the sheet.
So here's what's gonna happen, right? Like during the game, I'm gonna tell Paula when it's time to roll, and I'm gonna tell you the number I'm gonna tell you what your magic number is. Like, you won't have to figure out your THAC0.
No, I'll have it on here. I'll do the chart. It'll be. Okay. I'll learn. I'll figure it out. As long as you help me at character creation when I level.
It's totally gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine.
But
THAC0 is not that hard. I swear to you, it's not that hard.
I mean, I know it's not that hard. I get it, but it is still not intuitive for me, and it's still hard for me to remember. And I've never been able to do it. And I've played.
You need to know 2 numbers. You need 2 numbers. You need to know your to hit armor class 0, and you need to know what the creature's armor class is. You need to know the same thing in ascending armor class. You still need to know what the armor class is, right? Like, in order to hit, and you need to know what your proficiency score is, right?
No, technically you don't need to know what the monster's AC is.
Well, technically you don't need to know what the monster's AC is in old school either, right? Like, because then the DM is going to decide.
Sure.
Right?
So here's the other thing. That's why I'll never run this, because I will never get the AC and THAC0 stuff correct.
It's gonna be fine. All
right, so more overwhelming for me than Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Think of it as a static. Think of it as a static number to hit with AC rather than having dynamic to hit roll. Yes, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. I promise you. Once you subtract the armor class from the to hit armor class 0, you can do it on the fly.
So if my 2 hit is a 19, the goblin is a 7, it's really a 13. So I have to beat a 13.
No, a 12.
Or I'm sorry,
7.
Yeah, you're right. 9. Sorry, I'm tired.
You have to be able to do basic math to be able to do it. But yes, now you got it. So your to hit armor class is 0. Let's say somebody with an armor class of 2 attacks you, or you're attacking someone with an armor class of 2. What do you need to hit?
I'm sorry. Repeat the question.
Your to hit armor class 0 is 19. You're attacking someone with an armor class of 2. What do you need or
17.
better on a 20? There you go. You just figured out that.
So here's the thing. So when we've always played, I've never known what the monster's armor class is. First, that's the other thing. So if my beat number is 19, I roll a 20. I say I beat it by 1. Like, that's the other thing. So how do I tell the DM what I rolled?
How do you tell? Okay. Let me. No, because you're making it more difficult than it is.
I'm not trying to.
In D&D 5e.
Yes.
How do you tell the DM what you rolled?
I literally just tell him what I rolled on the die.
That's all you do. That's all you do in BECMI.
So now now the DM needs to know what your THAC0 is?
Yes, your DM does know what your THAC0 is.
Oh, because it's always the same thing unless you have like a magic item or something.
Yes, right. Right, your modifier. So just like in D&D 5e, you're going to give them your number plus your modifier. So I have +2 to hit. I rolled an 18. I have a dirty 20.
Oh, okay. Wait. So I'm trying to process this. I'm sorry. This is why that goes hard for me. Here's
what you need to know. This is all you need to know. Okay, if you have a +2 to hit, you roll an 18. What are you going to tell me that you rolled?
But I don't know my +2 to hit. I know that my 2-hit armor class 0 is 19. I rolled an 18 on the die.
No. Your modifier. If your strength is 16 and you have +2 to hit, you roll an 18. What are you going to tell me you rolled?
A 20, dirty 20. Yeah,
right, 20.
But how do you do that with THAC0?
I know that you're at first level. Your THAC0 is 19. You tell me you rolled a 20. You hit. It's no different than D&D 5e. You tell me what you roll, and I tell you if you hit, because I know the AC. You don't.
Right, I understand that, but I still know what my THAC0 is, which is your modifier, basically, if you translate that to 5e.
No, you're freaking crazy. No, THAC0 is a number. 2-hit armor class 0. The modifier goes against your dice roll, just like in 5e. +2, -2, +1, -1, +3, -3. It's whatever your modifier is.
But you don't have a modifier. You do, but it's not really a modifier, right? I'm not trying to frustrate you. I'm really trying to grasp it.
An attack has nothing to do with THAC0. An attack is an attack. An attack is based on your dexterity or your strength.
I get that.
THAC0 has absolutely nothing to do with it, right?
But I thought it does because the chart changes every level.
THAC0 is a static number based on your level. Yes. Which has nothing to do with your strength.
Modifier. Like if it doesn't change based on that?
Shit, man.
It doesn't change based on like your weapon you're using or something?
Your dice rolls are modified based on your modifiers.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
If you have a strength of 16, you have a +2 to hit. Has nothing to do with THAC0.
Sure.
Separate that in your mind, right?
Okay, sure.
You're adding that to your dice roll. So I roll a 16, I have +2, I rolled an 18, right?
Sure.
Your THAC0 is 19. You roll a 16 +2, it's an 18. It's under 19. You missed if their armor class is 0.
Sure. Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
All you need to know.
Paula said, should I roll for you? Flynn says THAC0 is weird. Was THAC0 in BECMI too? Yes.
Yes. THAC0 is
everything before 3rd edition.
THAC0 was in everything before the D20 system came out. Yeah. Right. So, but do you get what I'm saying? Here's what
I do. I'm going to forget, but I know I'm going to forget it tomorrow.
You're like, oh, my THAC0 has a modifier. No, your THAC0 is a static number. If you want to get slick, you could take the modifier and you could.
Paula always made me write it into my chart. She always made me do that. So I think that's part of what confused me.
Listen, you could do that. What I'm suggesting is, because you're so used to 5e, right? You're going to separate. Listen, you're going to
like 8 more years with Palladium.
You're going to separate your modifier from your THAC0. Your THAC0 is static.
Yes.
And your modifier affects only your dice rolls, which technically you should do anyway.
You should do it anyway.
You should do it that way anyway, because, and this, by the way, Paula, I understand that you want to write them down, but your dex modifier and your strength modifier are 2 different things. So if you're attacking with a ranged weapon, your THAC0 is actually going to be different than your strength unless they're the exact same number, right?
And,
so it's easier to leave the dex modifier as the dex roll and the strength modifier as the strength roll, and your THAC0 is static. And then you just do it in your head. Boom.
Sure.
Like give me an armor class. If your THAC0 is 19, right? Like give me an armor class and I can tell you in 1 second what their number is, right? Like, so then you roll whatever, add the modifier to your dice roll, and that's it. So all you have to do in this game, I promise you, is remember what your modifier is. Not THAC0. Don't say THAC0. Don't even mention it. Just say I'm attacking with my short sword. My strength modifier is +1. I rolled a 12, so I have a 13 to hit. Right?
So So for THAC0 being as easy as it is, we still spent 20 minutes on it.
We spent 20 minutes on it because it's
not as easy for me as I thought.
Right. I swear to you, it's not like most people will get it right away. You just you're subtracting armor class. No,
I'm worried we're going to have this conversation weekly.
It's not. That's not true. I think so. Here's what it is, and I know what Paula was trying to do for you, and I get it. Right? Like this is not me bashing Paula.
I think it made it more confusing over time for me.
But I do, because now you somehow in your mind have your modifier tied to your THAC0, and THAC0 is a static number, right? Like it only changes when you level up. That's it. Like, so yeah.
So when we're playing, for you as the dungeon master,
think of THAC0 like proficiency in 5e. It only changes, like proficiency only changes when you level up, right? Like you're +2, then now I'm +3. Like that's. Think of THAC0 as proficiency, and then just think of modifiers as modifiers. They are strength modifier, dex modifier, con modifier, charisma modifier.
I always add it all up and write it correctly on my sheet, though, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But so
I mean, I get why Paula and her brother did that for you. I get it.
Her brother never did. She always did it for me to make.
I think it that may have confused it in your mind.
I think so. So here's what I'm going to ask you then. So when you're running the game, you legit know every single person's THAC0.
Yeah, it's based on level. It's
right, but it's also based on whatever they are. So like a fighter's is going to be different than somebody else's, like a wizard's, right?
Yeah, but it's not. There's a chart. It's not hard. Like it's legitimately not hard.
I get that.
It's like
it just seems like a lot of extra work. Like I, as a player or as a DM, never feel like I need to know what someone's modifiers are. I even need to know.
That's not true. When you're running 5e, don't you want to know what your player's passive perception is?
I want them passive perception, yes. But that's a specific instance that's not used very often.
And so is THAC0. So it's not hard. I feel. It's not hard. So let's say you have 5 players. Let's say you have 6. Sure. How hard is it to mark down their THAC0? But also, you just know their THAC0.
Probably not.
Because you've seen the chart so many times, first level fighter, your THAC0's 19.
Sure.
Like, sure. I don't think it's hard.
I don't know if I could. I still, at this point, like, I know I couldn't run it. Like, it would just, for me, it would be a little bit.
I say the same thing about Pathfinder 2nd edition. I wouldn't run that. Like, and it's not like, it's like the same thing like this. Like, you could run this. It would be a nightmare. Like, you wouldn't enjoy your.
I would not. I'd be so busy worrying about numbers.
I could run Pathfinder 2nd edition. I wouldn't enjoy it, right? Like, yeah. I don't. So,
whereas I feel like Pathfinder 2nd edition, you could run it almost like 5e, and it would still be fun.
By the time we get. But I swear to you, by the time we get 3 sessions in, probably even before that, you're totally and you're going to see how easy this game actually is to run, and you're going to change your mind. You're going to be like, "Oh man, where is this?"
You're so confident, Bill. You're so confident.
The
Paula said the same thing 10 years ago, and here we are.
One of the reasons that I like this system so much, well, again, one of the reasons it's my Desert Island game is because it is so easy to run. It's elegant. It's simple.
So when I play the old Baldur's Gate game, I hate how the AC is listed and how THAC0 is listed. I hate it when I'm playing that video game because I'm like, I just know this is better, but like, damn it, like I don't know exactly what that means.
It's not. You're gonna know, and it's gonna be great. You're absolutely gonna know, because what's gonna happen is, much like in 5, you can tell after one round what the monster's armor class is. Just pay attention to what the rolls are at the table and who hit and who missed, right? Like you're gonna know it's the same thing, right? Like you're gonna be like, oh well, missed on a 13, but
you give 14, me way too much credit, Bill. You think I'm a lot smarter than I am. I'm not really that smart, man. I can figure shit out mechanically any day of the week, but like numbers in my head don't just fall into place like that.
you are smarter than you give yourself credit for.
I am downplaying it, but either way, it is still not as easy as.
And by the end of the campaign, you are gonna be like, hey man, can I run a BECMI campaign now? And I'm gonna be like,
you're getting you're really getting your hopes up now. You just want to play BECMI.
100%. I really do want to play BECMI. So that's okay. You know what the really bad part is, and so I don't know how many people are watching or if anyone is watching this, but if there's anybody out there, right, who wants to run a BECMI game. I want to play in a BECMI game so hard. Like I like to run it. Like, don't get me wrong. I like to run D&D in general, but like I am really jonesing to play through just a good old school BECMI campaign.
Gosh, you sound like me in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. If there's anybody out there who plays or runs Pathfinder 2nd Edition and wants to run a weekly campaign, come in. As long as we can make the schedule work.
Totally likewise for BECMI or BX, right? Like bonus points actually to somebody who wants to run some straight BX.
So or BX, even I thought was your favorite.
Even BX is my favorite.
So 100%. That's different than this in what way again?
Okay, so
because you said earlier this is your actual favorite, but I know that's not true.
I said this is my desert. If I could pick one book, this is my desert RPG.
Gotcha.
This is basic, expert, companion, master, and some immortal, right? However, this is the Frank Mentzer basic and expert edition, right? Like his editing, my favorite, right? Which came out in 1980/81, is this version of the game, right? This is the Tom Moldvay basic set, right? So this was edited, layout, editing, language, mechanics are essentially basically the same. Mentzer kind of did like the dual books, right? Where there's a player book and then there's a Dungeon Master's book. But he also, there's like it's like a choose your own adventure introduction. And I don't care for the choose your own adventure. It like seems so childish to me, right?
Like a one player thing?
I prefer the Moldvay really, really tight. We want to talk about editing. We want to talk about like sort of like language and how it matters. Tom Moldvay, if we want to talk about like the person who I think probably got D&D better than anybody else in the world, I think it was Tom Moldvay, and I think that it showed in his editing. The fact that he was able to create a 64-page rule book, that this rule book is 64 pages, right? Like, but it encompassed everything that you needed to play the game, at least, first through third level, I think was freaking brilliant. And yes, Mentzer did the same thing. And again, this is kind of like our Arneson Gygax conversation. No disrespect to Mr. Mentzer, right? Like Frank Mentzer is amazing. I think that my style, I prefer Moldvay. So Tom Moldvay, Zeb Cook, David Zeb Cook, right? Like in the expert one. So these were the first. That's why it's called BX, because there was only basic expert BX. That's it, right? The BECMI line was continued, but they dumped Moldvay and Cook, right? Like, and then they brought in Frank Mentzer, and then he sort of redid the basic, and then the expert was still Zeb Cook, and then they that's what they created the BECMI line with. I prefer the original BX, and there are not many of us, right? Like we are BXers unite. If you are a BX person, if you are a Moldvay fan, right? Like I am a Moldvay fanboy, right? Like if I had one wish, one dream in the RPG world, it would be to see Moldvay not pushed out of the BECMI line and to see what the eventual BECMI system would have looked like with Moldvay at the head, sort of creative control and editing and content and copy and
whatever happened to him.
That would have been my favorite addition ever. I just know it because BX is legitimately my favorite version of the game, hands down. Like I would play BX with like Pol Pot from the Khmer Rouge, right? Like I'd be like, yeah, I know you're an evil, disgusting human being, but man, like you're gonna run BX for me? I'll do it. Like I like BX is just the greatest,
Right.
like it is the greatest version of the game ever. And is that nostalgia, Bill? Yeah, sure. A lot of
Do
it's
you
nostalgia.
think there is a better game out there, like, or that could be made better than BX for you?
Do I think that there is a better? I do not think that there is a better version of Dungeons and Dragons. I have not seen it yet than that BX version. Because it combines rules light with what I think the core concept and feel of the game should be. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying for me, right?
Yeah.
Like
That's
so
what I'm asking
like
for you.
yeah, I like to for me it is my preferred and probably I think the best version of the game ever. It's enough you can sit down with this 64-page rulebook and in a night you can play the game, right? Like that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the rules should not be the forefront of the game. The rules should be in the background. They shouldn't interfere in play of the game, right? Like role playing is a concept. It's not about like intricate rules and like at least for me, right? Like
Sure.
I'm not a crunch person, right? Like I'm not.
Right.
I don't care. You know, it's funny. So you, I, and Paula were on the stream the other day, and Paula was discussing how she just kind of comes up with a build, and then she creates character. You know, once she's played a couple sessions and she sees how it goes. I'm the exact opposite, right? Like I'm like, okay, my guy looks like this, and he has these quirks, and this is his personality, and this is his motivation, and this is his drive.
Right.
Now, how the hell? I don't know what he's.
I go back and forth and do both.
He could be like, I don't care what he is, right? Like I don't care about build. I don't like. For me, it's character driven, and it always has been.
Right.
So yeah.
So I do both. So this is what's interesting. So I can do both. I can come up with a concept that's only character driven, or I can start with a build, right? Like, oh, mechanically, this is what they do.
Yeah.
Both of those, doesn't matter which one I do, will inspire the other choices. So if it's character based, I build it based on the character choice. If it's based on a build, I then mold a background around it. In almost every situation, I do a little bit of both, right? Especially in the newer systems where you have more mechanics. With older ones, I don't know everything about my character, but I'll figure it out as I'm playing the game sometimes.
Yeah. So it's like even even Bartholomew B. Sparkle, right? Like he was a character in my head first, right? He's this goblin. He's sort of.
Did you start just with a name too?
I did. Yeah. He's got ADHD. He's like really hyper. He's crazy. Like so. Then it's like, okay, well, how can I build this? Because initially he was a rogue, and then he's going to be a dual wielding fighter. And like, it doesn't matter what the build is. I know who Bartholomew B. Sparkle is, right? Like, so it doesn't matter what the like.
You just knew he was going to be a whirling dervish. That was the first thing you came up with.
Right, because I knew that came from in my head. Okay, I know he's like he's this hyper sort of like spastic.
Doesn't it suck you can't make it in this game?
I am saying like again, I am saying I'm it's all about character. I think I could make it. I could make the same
You'd
thing.
You'd have to reskin stuff, reflavor it.
Right.
I won't get approval.
Right, exactly. And that's I think again that's what I'm going back to. I think that older versions of the game require much more trust in your DM.
Yes.
That they're going to allow you to do the things that you want to do to have fun, right? But also that they're not going to be sort of the DM is God and this is my world and screw off and blah blah blah. Like but that's not fun for anybody, right? And so just like leave that table, go find a group that you fit in better with. And I would say that's
back then it was harder though.
But that's true to this day though, right? Like you can get a really bad DM and they can ruin any game. I don't care how well defined the rules are. A bad DM, right? Like so I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you, internet though.
Yeah,
you can find groups so much easier today than you could back.
Yeah, but you know what? All right, so let me ask you a question. Let's talk about that, right? Especially in today's day and age with COVID, and you know everyone is sort of playing online and Roll20, and
I'm playing more games now than I've ever played in my life.
Yep. So, I, from my perspective, and I don't like from my perspective, I love playing online with you, right? Like I think it's great. I love online. You know, I love it. Nothing beats actually sitting at the table. Like what I'm saying is although I love our Tyranny of Dragons campaign, I
Yeah.
think it's, I love the group, and I think that if we were all sitting around
It'd be
together at the
better.
same table, it would be 5 times better,
And
right?
I'd have minis, and I know you're not a mini guy, but it would be so much better with the big blue dragon over top and everything. Come on.
But do you agree, or like
Yeah, I think
online gaming like sort of scratch the itch
so
for
it
you?
depends. So I think they're two completely different experiences as a whole. So
Right.
in person, you can sit down and play a game for 6 hours and
Yeah.
still be ready to play some more.
Yeah.
When I play online, it's so much more intense. You're more focused. There's less conversation and stuff outside a game. And I feel after 3 hours, I am spent most of the time. I'm just like, I'm good to end a session usually, but I won't be able to sleep because I'll be thinking about everything. And I do that after every session. So the actual play experience is drastically different. I do think because of online, I'm able to play with a lot more people, better people, get different perspectives, things like that. Whereas in person, you're very limited in who you can play with.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do agree. In person I would rather do that every single time. Every single time.
It's tabletop gaming. It's So
and for me too, so one of the things that I hate about online, I don't like using a lot of the tabletop simulators. I don't like the setup that it involves when you have to set up a map and miniatures that way. So I do theater of the mind. However, there's always differences of what people envision in their head.
Oh yeah.
Like whether it's distance or size. Plus, that's a weak point of mine anyways, trying to give descriptions of things. That's a weak point of mine. So I do rely on miniatures sometimes.
So completely for sure. And that's actually one of the reasons why old school gaming pre third edition required such trust in your DM, right? Most people, and that's not to say that people weren't playing with minis. People were, right?
They had the Ralpartha pewter ones and stuff.
Minis were expensive, man. Those lead.
They still are, dude.
So, not many people.
Hang on, cheap plug. Tactical tokens, affordable. You can get everything you need, guys.
Completely agree.
And they got beautiful logos and all sorts of cool stuff.
Tactical token is phenomenal. Dave's great, and also he's going to do cameos in the B2 game. But
I can't wait.
So what I was saying is, I don't like. Not many people were playing with minis. Most was theater of the mind, and you would sort of use dice as markers, or even
pennies.
Or jelly beans or anything, right?
Hey guys, we got some chips. Here's the dragon.
Right, but most of it was sort of theater of the mind, and you did have to trust the DM quite a bit. Like, where am I? Well, you're about 25 to 30 feet away. Well, where am I now? Can I do
and then they draw little pictures. Yeah.
And a lot of that is hand waved, right? I mean, so that's the thing. You have to have a lot of trust in your DM. And quite frankly, if your DM is an adversarial DM, in theater of the mind, it's quite easy to take the advantage away from you always, right? Like, oh no, you're just out of range. Oh, somehow now the orcs are just in range to be able to attack.
You notice, like in my Tyranny of Dragons game, like when people are like, well, how far away are we? I try to say 30 feet because I know that's within your range mechanically. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I try to hand wave some of that stuff and let people envision it how they want. Like there was a moment in our game Saturday where all of you were behind the building. Well, then that shifted and I picked up on it, but I just hand waved it and everyone was in the tree line except for the two out there. I just hand waved it, even though it's like a good 20 feet difference. Because it doesn't matter. And I just want you guys to have fun. But there's too many people, not too many people. There's a lot of people where that would take them out of it when it comes to the immersion. Because they'd be like, well, that's not what I envision.
I don't even know that it takes. So here, I'm going to disagree. And the only reason I agree conceptually with what you're saying. I think that
it doesn't worry me, but
I think that I think language matters, though. I think I don't necessarily think the people that are really playing theater of the mind and they have that immersion, I don't think it takes those people out. I think it takes the tacticians out, right? I think it takes the people who are not envisioning it in their mind, who are literally they're playing.
Or the people that don't like dying and they like trying to benefit themselves.
Right, they're playing a war game, right? Like they're moving chits. It's like chess. They're moving chess pieces on a board, right? Like that's how they see it. They're seeing even when you're explaining stuff in theater of the mind, you can see that they're envisioning a virtual tabletop. They're envisioning graphs. They're envisioning
so
like
my
hexes on a
experiences
board.
with those people, they are not people who played 5e. They're people that played second edition and older. So no, hang on. This is what you need to understand. I'm talking about my wife's brother's group. His wife never played anything newer than second edition. And she was definitely one of those people who would get upset and argue about placement and all that stuff. But I think part of it is that she's afraid of dying because she's always hated her character dying. She's never played graph and minis until me.
I've played with a lot of tacticians, a lot. I don't particularly care to play with I'll take that back. It's not that I don't care to play with tacticians. I don't care to be a tactician. And when you're when you're DMing for tacticians, you have to play like a tactician. And so I don't necessarily enjoy that, right? So, but what I will say is,
but I don't think she's a tactician.
It has not been my experience that those people are BECMI or 1E or 2E. You know who those people are? Those people are 3.5 and 4E players. Oh my God, those people think in terms of a grid. Okay.
So this person also would cheat on the grid. I'm just letting you know it's not a tactician.
If I move here, do I gain an advantage? Or can I possibly start a conga line? Come on, man.
I know what you're saying. The people I've played with, I'm not referring to as that. They're like, I've played with tacticians. I know what you're talking about. The one I'm talking about is
the conga line of death.
It's just a cheater.
It is legitimately the conga line of death. Everyone starts to line up so that they can give advantage to the it's so bad. Like I can't.
I feel fortunate that I have barely had to deal with that in my years. So that's the other thing, right? So I've been gaming since 97. I did not use miniatures until 6 years ago. And it became my preferred style after what? 17 years? It then became my style?
I have been gaming since 81 and I never use miniatures ever, have I? That's not to say I've never used miniatures. That's saying that I primarily run theater of the mind. Yeah.
Even in home groups?
Yeah. All specifically and especially in home groups.
Interesting.
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
Well, because
so even in an old edition that doesn't have distance rules the same way, I actually like using minis just for placement. We did it for some second edition. It was great.
The group that I've been playing in has been together for so long that you just learn to trust. I think that you just trust the DM, right? You trust the DM visions and that.
Do you think it's a trust thing, or do you just think it's because again, I wouldn't say it's that I don't trust my players because, for instance, online, I don't need to see your die rolls, right? I trust.
No, I'm not talking about the DM trusting the players. I'm talking about the players trusting the DM.
Okay, well, even when I play as a player, I don't feel like I don't trust DMs. I just again, between the group, knowing where things are in relation to each other. And
but I think that does come down to trust, and I think there are a lot of people who don't trust their DM, specifically when it comes to theater of the mind.
Yeah, I don't not trust my DMs though. Like Provokers, we did theater of the mind. I never felt like I didn't trust them. There were times I didn't understand where things were. Placement wise, and it would have been nicer in some instances to have minis. But
truth is,
it was fine. It still was fun.
But truth is that it is mostly, here's the secret, right? It is mostly hand waved. And truth is, Matt probably didn't know where half the people were.
Oh yeah, I know. I agree.
Yeah. The difference is, I think when it comes down to trust, I think the difference is, and it's no different with so you just said the person that that plays with on a grid tries to cheat the grid, right?
It's just that one person I've pretty much dealt with.
It's no different theater of the mind or whether you're playing on a grid. Again, if you're a person that is trying to cheat at a game that is unwinnable, then good on you.
It's not about winning though. It's about her character not dying. That's all it's about.
It's like what I was saying to Chance the other day in the stream. It is not. I don't have the time, the patience, or the care. I don't have zero fucks are given. If you want to cheat, go for it, right? Because all you're doing is you're cheating yourself, right? Yeah.
That's funny. It was the same day. So it's funny. The same day we were having problems with the grid movement stuff, we played a different game. Oh, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but so in the chat, I think that it's a side effect from 3E D20, where players could argue rules lawyer more with the GM than in previous RPGs. That is exactly what I said like 45 minutes ago, right? Like that's where that came from.
Yeah, but that person never played that was my only point. And they were playing well before.
In general, right?
Sure, like, and I agreed with that. I agreed with that.
Yeah.
I agreed with the whole tactician thing. I just said this one person that I was like actually my personal experiences with was not a tactician gamer. That's all.
No. I think what I'm saying is, moreover, the whole the reason that third edition and on is such a completely different game, right? Like that things began to become really defined, and that was the advent of the rules lawyer. I think that's where the rules lawyer was born. I think that's where without question.
So I never felt like I argued rules at all. Like Palladium books never really argued rules that I remember. I did not argue rules until I played second edition with Paula's family. That was the first time I started.
I have never. Well, okay, so here's the thing though, right? I was going to say I have never played a Palladium books game at all. I would love to just I want you to run just a Palladium.
I would run a one shot at some point.
I don't know, Rifts or whatever your preference is, right?
We'll get rid of the MDC and just do SDC.
So that aside, I have heard stories, and I sure Paul's family are wonderful people, right? But
they're good people. I love them. I like playing with them.
I have heard stories of sort of the games, and I don't know necessarily that I would want to run for them, right? Like they don't sound.
They've gotten a lot better,
right?
So her brothers, as a player, love playing. He plays my Blackrock game. We're playing this Saturday.
Yeah.
He's awesome as a player. Love him as a player. As a DM, I don't always agree with how he does things because it's not how I would do it. I still have fun. That's why I played with him. But so the issue I had, for example, that made me kind of rules lawyer. So we had 2 fighters and a ranger. And in second edition, fighters have specialization, right off the bat.
Right.
He let the ranger have specialization too, for just out of the blue. Like this wasn't something that was talked about in character creation. So that once that happened, I was like, actually, they don't have it. And rather than just say, well, let me double check it or whatever, because I didn't make a big scene about it or anything. He just was like, or whatever kind of thing. And so, but for me, I was like, well, damn, I would have been a ranger if I had that, because that's a really good ability to have in second edition, and he's got it with his bow. Like I had it with a sword and I had 4 hit points. I also had a bow. I had to wait for my next specialization to put it on my bow. So that was one of the many things that bothered me about it.
That I don't know necessarily that would bother me. I think I think that the things that would bother me from what you've told me, so character death, and then people you just want to quit. Oh well, screw this game.
That was in our Toon game, and it wasn't even her character. It was her son's character and my character.
I can't play with people like that. I just can't.
She apologized and she said she's working on it.
The other thing that you told, so then we're creating a new character, and it's oh well, if I don't have at least 3 18s, then my character is not worth playing. What?
So let me tell you something.
That says more about.
That's Paula 5 years ago.
That says more about post third edition games than anything, right? That's what I'm saying. It's all in the build. It's not necessarily in the character play.
My point was all those people came from second edition. All 3 of those people. 4 of them.
And they're all cheaters, because I'm telling you, it's not possible to get 3 18s in second edition.
So this is what they did though. So they did the whole all right, roll 3d6, re-roll 1s. You can also drop a stat 2 points to put 1 in another one. That was their character creation rules.
And they somehow came up with multiple.
Not 3 18s, but with as time has gone on, I don't know how it exactly changed, but I remember, and it wasn't 3 18s. But it was, they needed at least 1 or 2 above 16.
No,
that's how they played it.
You were saying that that somebody was upset because their character was going to be completely useless because they didn't have at least 3 18s.
So that was Paula's nephew our nephew. That was that group's son who also started in second edition. And again, I don't know how he ever got that. I don't know. But yes.
Well, I don't. Also, I have played a lot of second edition, and if you end up with 3 A-teens, like that's a once in a lifetime character.
Well,
you're like, I mean, like
that's where people house ruled the 4d6 drop the lowest though too. Like that started, I think, back in second edition, didn't it? The house rule.
So yeah, well, actually, there is a 4d6 rule in the BECMI book. Like they will.
Okay, so it is older. So
it's optional.
That's how people got those stats and got that in their head over time.
Right. So here is like 3d6 in order is it is something that is near and dear to my heart because
I love it personally.
I believe in the dice gods, right? Like I absolutely do.
I told you we should do that for this.
Dice rolls to me are sacred, right? Like, but it's not for everyone. I get it, right? So this is the system that I offer, and this is the system that I've always offered. This is the system that I offer to my home group, right? So here's what you can do. Only if, right? You can roll, if you roll 3d6, in other words, only 3 dice, right? You can put those numbers, you can slot them wherever you want. So in other words, you don't have to do them in order. You roll 3d6, you slot them wherever you want. Or you can do 4d6. But if you do 4d6 and drop the lowest, they have to be in order. That's the way that we create characters. That's just the way that we do it.
So
now here's what I'm going to offer.
This is the part that I hate, but I'm going to go.
Remember in the beginning when I told you that I'm going to make special shirts, right? If you do 3d6 down the line, you get a special personalized memorial shirt, right? It's going to be really cool. That calls out sort of that you created your character with.
You already know I'm doing that.
So we'll see.
Are you going to let me ignore the prerequisites though? Because I'm sure I'm not going to roll high enough in my strength to be a fighter.
If you roll 3d6 down the line, right? I won't let you be a fighter if your strength is like 3. That's gonna that doesn't make any sense. You can't do that.
It
like
totally makes sense. I just suck at being a fighter.
You're breaking the game at that point. Like whatever your highest number is. If you roll a high wisdom, you're going to be a freaking cleric. If you roll a high intelligence, you're going to be a freaking magic user. And if you roll a high strength, you're going to be a freaking fighter. Like that's the way the game. That's the game that was intended to play. And when you go. If you look at character creation, like in 5e, you pick what you want to be and then you roll. No. In BECMI,
I'm fine with it either way. I just hate the prerequisites.
And then you go, okay, what am I going to be, right? Like, and what I'm saying is, it's not even necessarily about the prerequisites. It's that you're going to be useless as the character that you pick.
Yeah, but the role, Bill, think of the role play. I have muscular dystrophy. That's why I struggle to carry my sword. Like, this makes sense, Bill. I have a grievous injury from a wolf that attacked my arm.
Here's what I'll tell you. If you can make a good enough case for it, sure.
Yes, thank you. You've just made my day.
If you can come up with a good enough backstory to cover it, then
I will write 7 pages for you.
I'm a sucker for a good backstory, so yeah.
That's all I ever want. So for me, and when I played the second edition, we did the. I think he also let us play some, but I did it down the line, and I just was like, all right. Obviously, I have to have the prerequisite because he forced us to. So I did that to be a fighter. But yeah. So, anyways, that stuff inspires the character. So again, this is the build inspiring the character for me. That's the other side of the coin I love.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I had a one shot where a fighter had like a 10 or a 9 in strength. I was the DM. And it was a Sir Rochester or something like that. It was an old retired guard who wanted to be an adventurer. And so the role play was great.
Right. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, if, again, I'm not evil. If somebody wants to play a specific thing, like, for example, Paula wants to play an elf, right? I'm not going to... I'm not going to make her roll 3d6 down the line, right? Like, assign them where you want. Put it in strength and intelligence. Fine. I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, play the character that you want to play. Like, So, yeah. I personally like 3d6 because the dice gods are deciding what I'm going to play, right? Like, hey, man, maybe I'm sick of playing a fighter. Like, maybe, oh, shit, I'm going to be a thief this time. Or I'm going to be a magic user. Or,
So I am so cruel. but I have never had a group that lets me be cruel. I have always wanted to run a campaign where if you die, you make a first level character. I don't give a crap. But I do not have any groups who ever want to do that. Paula will never do it.
I want to do it. I want to do it. Like you should.
See?
You know what? You should call Tyranny of Dragons right now. Well, the thing is, though, you let us start at third, so you shouldn't. You have to let whatever you.
I don't have to
do
anything.
Well, no, but I mean, like that would be fair. But
I wouldn't do it for that one.
You know, I'll tell you, if you start running BECMI or if you start running BX, every player that you find will be there. Not only will they let you do that, that's what they expect, right? Like that's why death means something, because you don't get to come back. You don't get to come back at 9th level. You're a maggot at first level. The cool thing about that is, if you're with a party that's not evil, they will protect you and you'll level up fast because you're getting so much experience points. Like, because you're facing 9th level stuff, you're really only talking 2 or 3 sessions before you're back to where you were, right? So
yeah, Paula, none of those groups would ever let me do that ever as a DM.
I think I would totally
same level.
I wouldn't even question it. In fact, I'd just be like, okay, so I'm rolling up my first level character.
Right. So, well, that's what I'm saying though. Like when we talk old school gamers, I played with other old school people in the past too, but it was Palladium books. But they also did the same thing where you didn't drop to first level. Like I played with some pansy players and DMs over the years that just don't do that, unfortunately.
Well, unfortunately, and here's the thing. That's a style of play. It's a valid style of play.
I just want to try it. That's the thing. I haven't tried it really.
I don't necessarily get it because again, like to me, the challenge is the game, right? Like the the excitement in the game, and that's like, and plus, there is some sort of cachet to saying, yeah, I rolled 3d6 down the line and I died and started at first level and came back.
Die after a week.
There's like a feeling of achievement at some point. Like it's like playing a game on hardcore mode, right? Sure,
but I'm okay with it in RPGs. I'm not okay with it in video games. I'm a pansy when it comes to video games. I like to just play it casually and just not care. Whereas like role-playing games, I want to experiment. I want to try all these different things. Like I want to play 5e where if you die, you start at first level, I want to try 3d6 down the line. I want to try.
Have you seen Runehammer's 5e hardcore mode on DM's Guild?
I've seen it, but I don't have it. I don't have any of his products.
So it's basically old school rules applied to 5e, 3d6 down the line. Like seriously, 3d6 stuff down the line. Yeah, no, like when you hit 0 hit points, you dead, right? Like there's no.
I hate death saving throws too. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You realize that in BECMI, there's no like it's insta death, right? There's no
0 is dead.
Yeah, right. Like that's it. There's no coming back. Right? Like you could find a resurrection spell, maybe, right? Like
you have like an hour or something. Yeah.
I'll be real honest with you. I don't. As a DM, when you're dead, you're dead. I don't even.
That's fine by me.
So
here's the funny thing. So I want to run a game where people start off first level, but I'm not heartless, right? If I knew somebody was really attached to their character and it was an uneventful death, I might work in a story where the players go into hell to pull you out or pull you out of limbo. Like I might work that into it in order to bring that character back, but it would depend on the circumstances of the death. Like if it was just a bullshit thing,
I completely agree, right? Like nobody wants to die falling into a pit, like a 10-foot pit with spikes on the bottom, right? Like nobody wants to die like that. That's just stupid, right? Which is a whole other thing.
Maybe.
I'm not a big trap DM. I hate traps. I don't really necessarily traps belong in a game, but whatever. Like
I like traps, but it has to make sense. You can't just have traps in every single dungeon just because you're trying to make it difficult.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're going into a kobold den, right? You expect there to be traps, right? But like if you're just sort of random, like you know what I mean? It's the random.
Hey, I'm in a castle of like a vampire. Why are there traps?
Like yeah, right.
That vampire's not gonna set traps. He thinks he's more powerful than you anyway.
Yeah. So what I will say is, so in old school D&D, right? Retainers were used, torchbearers, right? Like, and so what you would really your torchbearer was your first level guy that you were going to take over, right? like when you die, right? Like, so
the little
you already
army
had
minion guys.
guy doesn't level up, and he's basically just there to bear your torch or your sack or whatever it is that you're carrying, right? Like that. And then when you die, he's there, right? Like, oh, I'm now Bartholomew B. Sparkle, my freaking retainer that like I, that's kind of the way that you did it.
It made it easy to jump right into it again.
Exactly. It made it so that you didn't have to. It made it so you don't have to stop play, right? Or that person doesn't have to sit out for the rest of that session, or what have you. So yeah.
So do you like the prerequisites for classes?
Yeah, I absolutely do.
And I'll tell you why. That?
Because it gives you experience points. There are no milestones in old school D&D. It's all based on XP, and you get a 10% kick to experience. Is a big freaking thing when you need to level up to survive, right? Like you need to get to level 3 as quickly as you can, or you're gonna die.
You don't think it's dumb that experience is tied to your primary stat?
No, not at all, because it's what you're good at, right? Like I think it actually makes sense. So for example, if I'm a fighter, why though?
If I'm a fighter, just because I'm stronger does not mean I learn quicker. Because
it's not
realistic at all.
You're applying 5e logic to experience points from old school D&D. Old school D&D has nothing to do about learning things, right? XP was tied to gold. That's not learning anything.
If I talk to you about experience in your field of marketing, what do you think that means? That means you learned things from wisdom.
Separate it in your mind. We're going to do this like that. So if you think of it more like Skyrim, right? Like, okay, think of it like Skyrim. And you go and you're playing, and you get to the Guardian Stones, and if you're a warrior, you're going to pick the Warrior Stone. Why? Because you're going to level up faster because, like, you're strong, and right? Or if you're the thief, then you're going to take Thief Stone.
I was going to say, it depends on what you're trying to level up at the time.
Sneak better, right? Like you're going to level up faster. Same thing.
You're using video game logic for.
Yeah. If you're a fighter, what you're doing involves strength. So the higher your strength, the quicker you're going to level up. The better a fighter you're going to be. Being a good fighter has nothing to do with like how charismatic you are, right? Like being a fighter.
I don't think it should be tied to any of your stats. Personally.
And then a magic user, right? Like they're gonna level up better. They're gonna be a better magic user the smarter they are, right? Like so, it's tied to whatever the attribute is, right?
I understand what it does. I just don't agree with it. So my theory. So it's assuming that no matter what, the stronger the fighter, the better fighter they are. And that's because of within the mechanics, that's how it works. But I don't like it being tied to that in general. I just feel like if 2 people go to fight a dragon, the XP should be the same. Now, did the strong guy kill it faster? Probably. And so in that case, he's already a better fighter. But the other guy could have learned or picked up just as much experience by fighting it. May have figured out something that the stronger guy didn't have to figure out. May have figured out weak spots. May have figured out other things. And so he should get the same amount of XP.
He does. What I'm saying is,
he doesn't get the 10% bump.
Yes, he does. If it's a thief and a fighter, and the fighter
I'm talking about the same fighter. Or not the same fighter, but 2 different fighters. But one's like stronger, than the other one.
Oh,
you're saying they get 10% bump because of the strength being an 18 or whatever.
Right, one has a 14 strength, one has an 18 strength, both fighters, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not. It's because this guy is just stronger. Again, XP is not like, oh, I did like I'm learning more or whatever. It's just an incentive to keep people from doing what you want to do, which is, oh well, I'm going to be a fighter, but I only have 3 strength. And I have an 18 intelligence. So, but I'm going to be a fighter. So what it says is, look, you should probably be a magic user because if you are, you're going to get 10% extra experience.
Bill, you're making an argument for mechanics over roleplay, though.
I'm not. I'm saying that. No, I'm absolutely not. I'm saying I love roleplay. I'm saying that was the mechanic in the game. That's what it's built for. You're saying you don't understand it. I'm simply trying to explain.
No, I understand it. I just don't agree with it, I guess is what I'm at.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? So maybe I was using poor words.
It makes sense, but it also makes the numbers matter. It makes your stats matter, your ability scores matter. What I mean is, like, it basically, like, it's a bonus to rolling well, right? So what
it's a bonus to chance.
And the bottom line is this, right? When you're rolling 3d6 down the line, your chances of getting a 16 or better on any of them are very slim.
Sure.
So most people aren't getting any kick to
12
experience.
Is like where you can kind of expect,
like,
around your stats to be.
Most people are not going to get any kick to experience. So when you get that kick to experience, it's like, it's a good thing. You're happy about it. You're excited. So, like, yeah, I dig it. So yeah.
It's funny because that is 100% an argument for mechanics, though.
No, it's not. It's not. No,
I'm not. You're excited because of the mechanics of the character creation aspect of it.
But because it's rare, not because it's. In fact, it's because it's unexpected, not because it is expected.
But it is still mechanics. I understand, but it's still mechanics.
Fine. Yeah, right. When you find, okay, I'll tell you what, when you find feats and game breaking mechanics in any old school game,
I'm not talking about game breaking. No, but that's not, I didn't say it's game. Well, yeah, I'm not saying it's game breaking at all, what you're excited about. I'm just saying you are excited about the mechanical aspects of it. That's it.
Yes. And but I guess what I'm saying is, right, there's, again, context matters.
Sure.
There are mechanics and there are mechanics.
Like, I don't get excited about breaking a game. Like, I am not one of those people who's like, oh, I found this thing that always, like, whoops everything. Like, that doesn't excite me. Like, multi-classing in 5e is something I don't even really do. If I do, it's because of a roleplay reason. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not looking to exploit the system. And so that's not what excites me about it.
Like yesterday when we were talking through, who was going to replace Raz, and it's like, I'm going to be a sword paladin or a, like, whatever, dude. Just
I'm fine with it. It doesn't matter to me, but
who cares, man? Just like, do you really have to multi-class? And are you multi-classing to fit a concept that you have, or are you multi-classing because you're trying to get the best mechanical benefit? That's what I'm saying. Context matters, right? There's mechanics and there's mechanics. Like,
but both situations you're looking for the advantage. So in your situation with BECMI, you're saying to put the thing that would give you the experience bump because it's rare, but that is also looking for the advantage. Rather than saying, well, I know 16 is my highest stat, but I really want this dex-based fighter. So I'm going to put dex as 16. So I'm good with my bow. You know what I mean? Because for example, as a fighter, I'm going to have a bow at some point and I'm going to have a weapon. It's smart.
But you can't, but what I'm saying is you can be a dex-based fighter.
But it doesn't give you the experience bump. That's what I'm saying, though. Whereas you would say you should probably think about making that 16 your strength and the 14 your dex. But I'd be like, but what if I want the dex-based fighter? Which I know you would say that's fine. That's fine. But at the same time, you would be like, that's not the smart choice. You should do it the other way. If you're talking to a new player, that's what you would do, right?
No, if I was talking to a new player, I 100% would. I would tell them to take the kick to experience. I don't see how that equates to, okay,
this feat is better than this feat.
At first level, you're going to take this, and then your ABI is going to be here, and then you're going to skip your ABI here, and you're going to take your ability score increase. Then you're going to skip your ABI, but you're going to take this. You're going to take Polearm Master, and then you're going to take Sentinel.
We don't have to do 7 things. Let's stick to one thing. This feat's better than this feat, so you're going to want that one, not this one. That's the same thing as saying the attribute thing.
You're right. You know what? I am.
No, totally. I'm not saying you're the same. I'm just saying it's funny because there are some things that you kind of do say it. You just don't want to admit it sometimes, and maybe you just don't see it. But
I don't see it. But, like, I guess you're right. I create such OP characters, and I play.
Oh, don't do that, Bill. Bill. Don't do that. Don't get upset.
I'm not getting upset. That's what I'm saying is you're completely out of context.
How am I out of context?
So far out.
In both scenarios, you're saying one is an advantage over the other, right? So whether you take feat A or feat B, one is better than the other for this build. Whether you take the 16 strength or the 16 dex, the strength is better for the fighter build. Like it's the same thing. It's just where you get it from.
Right. You are 100% right.
You're only saying that though. You're being so passive aggressive right now, and I hate it, Bill. I hate it.
At all. Like, you're right. Like, the mechanics are so, like, you basically could spend like 4 hours in BECMI trying to build like the perfect optimal character.
I didn't say that. I never said that.
Man,
that's not what I said. You're twisting it. You're totally twisting it.
No, you are choosing feats and whether there's a bump to like this is your bit. Your complaint about this system is that there's a bump to experience. Like,
I actually don't want it.
If you roll over 16.
So if I remade BECMI, say I made it into something new, there would not be any bumps to experience, and there would not be prerequisites. Like, that's probably and THAC0 would be inverted. That's the only 3 things I would probably change about it, and I would probably, like you've said, I would probably love this system, right?
So then play basic. You just
that's probably true.
You just described basic fantasy.
That's basic
fantasy. Basic fantasy is BX with ascending armor class, no and optional milestone as opposed to experience points.
Sure. And I'm excited to play this with you again. Like, this is not me dogging this system. I just
no.
I just don't agree. I think it kind of sucks for, like, when it comes down to it, when, like, say 2 people make a fighter at the table and one's gonna definitely grow quicker because they rolled better in a moment a year ago or something. You know what I mean?
That's my whole point. Like, the dice gods are the dice gods, right? Like, and this is my like.
But there's no dice gods.
There are, and I hate to break this to you. But like everything in life isn't equal, right? Like,
but it's like a game. I want to forget real life.
Some people are smarter than other people. Some people are stronger than other people. Some people are faster than other people.
Sure.
Like, that's just life, right? Like, there's no balance in life, right? And so does it suck that, like, I guess what I'm saying is, you're saying I don't even want the kick to experience points. So then why are you pissed off if somebody chooses to take it?
I'm not pissed if someone chooses to take it.
You are.
No, I wouldn't care. The only way I would care is if another person made the same character as me. That's the only way I would care. Because when I play a game like this, where you don't have those options to, in my mind, make it feel different.
But you do have the option. What I'm saying is, if you and I both roll up fighters, right?
Yes.
And we both roll an 18.
Yep. One's going to be stronger than the other.
If you choose to put your 18 in dex, that's your choice. If I choose to put my 18 in strength, that's my choice.
So what if we both put our highest stat in strength, but mine's only a 15 and yours is an 18? Now I feel like, oh, that sucks.
But again, are you as, like, every person that you meet on the street, do they look exactly the same as you?
We're not talking about real life. We're talking about a game.
But that's my whole point. This is why I hate like 3rd edition and on, because like the whole thing is, well,
I don't
this other guy for that. this other guy's character is stronger than I am, and so like I'm useless. Well, fuck off. Then don't play the game. Don't go play Skyrim. Like, don't like. I guess what I'm saying is, be better, like play better, like come up with, make your character a face, or make your
So I never had a problem in the past with it, ever, until I had a game where I was playing. We had another fighter. I actually had I was the stronger fighter actually in that game. We both had 18s, but it did that percentage thing at the end of it or whatever. I don't remember. But the thing that I had less hit points. So, which again didn't matter, but every choice I made.
I heard about this, man.
No. Like, so every choice I made. So, like, for example, I was working towards, I backstoried my character to specialize with a specific weapon, and then this was his other choice of weapon. And the thing that bothered me is the other person playing the fighter copied me and legit made arguments for all the shit, like that I was like going for even before we ever had it. Like they went and took those things because it was just how we did things. And I remember being rubbed wrong about that. And then I was like, this really is irritating. So most of my stuff isn't even so much about the system. It's more just a single experience I had.
Yeah,
and so that's where it comes down to.
I guess what I'm saying is it sounds more like the people that you're playing with and less the game that you're playing, right?
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree. And it was how things were handled more than even the people. Because again, I liked the game. I had fun with the people. It's just certain things rubbed me wrong.
So again, and we're talking
That's
about
why
like
I'm excited to try this. I want to see if my old school perspective can change.
Let's talk about like the old school game. Here's what else, like what you're saying is, right? Like in old school D&D, right? Nobody wanted to play a magic user. Nobody wanted to play a cleric. A cleric at first level has no spells. You're just basically you're a fighter that can only use blunt weapons, right? Like you're nerfed from the beginning, right? Magic users have 1d4 hit points. Thieves have 1d4 hit points, right? Like nobody wanted to play those. So you would end up with a party of like 4 or 5 fighters and 1 magic user, or 4 or 5 fighters and 1 cleric, right?
Yeah, we weren't even allowed to do that.
But what I'm saying is they were all the same. And you did play like most of the party was fighters, right? Like, and so yes, somebody would have an 18 strength, or somebody would have a 16 or a 17 strength, and somebody would have a 12. And you weren't like, well, your fighter's stronger than mine. No,
I never said that. I'm saying that post now. But I didn't say that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But so here's the thing though. So in a game like this, right? You like, I would be like, okay, my guy is really good with battle axes. Like this doesn't need to have specialization for me to do that. I'm gonna role play that my guy
does. You can't
at 10th level though or something.
Yeah, there's weapon specialization.
So anyways, my point is though, at first level, I would be like, all right, my fighter specializes in battle axes. He is an expert on battle axes. He loves them. He's obsessed with the craftsmanship. Like I would take it probably beyond of what it ever needs to be. And the thing I would get annoyed about is if the next player's like, yeah, my character loves battle axes too. That would piss me off because I'd be like, you are stealing my shit.
that would piss me off too. But again, that's more, I think that's more the group and less the system, right? Like that's gonna.
I agree.
Like even in your Holy Grail Pathfinder 2nd edition, right? Like where well, but what I'm saying, in terms of character creation, where you can have 12 fighters and none of them are the same. You could have one person who sits at the table and goes, oh, really? What's your ancestry? I'm taking that too. What specialization are you taking? I'm taking that too. The same thing
does that happen? Come on.
Well, apparently quite often in your games. Apparently.
Not in Pathfinder or D&D 5e. I've never had it happen in the hundreds of games I've played that are new games.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
So, what do you think? Do you want to go another hour, or how are you feeling?
I have to work tomorrow morning, unfortunately.
Nope, I understand that.
Another hour. And you know what? Maybe next Sunday
we continue doing this though.
Yeah, next Sunday
we haven't covered this much.
No, I agree. We haven't at all. And next Sunday we will, because here's why, and this is why I'm suggesting it. I think next Sunday, because on Tuesday you will have some experience at least with character creation and how that goes, right? Like not that you don't know, but you'll have it'll be fresh in your mind, and we can discuss that, you know, on the following Sunday. Like, hey, this, you know, how did it go and what did you think?
I'm with you. I think that'll be good, because at least we can talk about the character creation. We can talk about a little more personal, like what do I think my character's going to do, like you know, all that good stuff, because I might have 2 hit points or whatever, and we might go, well, shit, he's not going to last very long.
Here's the other thing though, right? Like, so at first level in BECMI, the option is just to give you full hit points, and I do, right? Like I'm going to give you that option. If you want to roll, you can, or you can take full hit points. So
I think I might roll. I think I'm just going to try to experience it as lethal as possible. I just want to. If I'm playing it, and that's the true intent of some of those older games, that's where I want to go. I don't think everybody needs to do that, but I'm totally going to try and drag Peter with me.
No, I actually think Peter's all about it, right?
He is when I said it.
The person that I worry about is Paula a little bit, like, right? Like,
she and not that, like, it'll be apprehension.
Yeah, I know. So that's the other thing. Next Sunday we can debrief. You can tell me how bad Paula hates it. And she's like, I'm underpowered. I can't do anything.
Sure.
I hate my guy. Like, yeah, right.
We'll even talk about it on mini painting on Wednesday and Thursday. I'm sure it's going to be the topic of the week.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, then let's wrap there. If you guys are not familiar, this was Persuasion Check. This is your first time. I hope you will hit follow if you're watching it on Twitch. If you're watching it on YouTube, please give us a subscribe. If you want to catch this live, it's every Sunday on Twitch, twitch.tv/masterthegamerpg. Would love to see you over there live. You can get questions answered, as you can see on the show. And this is something new. So we're going to be covering different games, different gaming topics. I'm sure over time we might get into some of the controversial stuff that's out there, whether it's a Twitter topic or whatever. We won't necessarily be PC. Others might try to be PC on this show. You just have to wait and see. But I guarantee it'll be fun. And at the end of the day, no hard feelings between us. We are human and we disagree on a lot of stuff, but at the same time, we overlap on a lot of stuff.
I still think you're a great guy, though, Juice. Yep.
I still love you, Bill. I don't agree with everything, but I love you.
Also, if you guys are watching this on the replay, so if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, probably the best way to reach out to us if you have questions, right? Will either be comment on, in the YouTube comments, or reach out to me on Twitter @RollStats, or reach out to Juice @MasterTheGameRP. Honestly, Twitter is probably going to be the easiest way to contact us. Suggest a topic
or Discord. I'm on my Discord every day.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah. Or and I am not that good.
I peel the curtain back on Discord. I talk about like my personal life. I'm pretty open on there, so you'll just get a glimpse behind the curtain with what's going on in my real life too. You may or may not want to know how angry I am at my kids that day, or Paula, or whatever.
Or how many weeks it takes to paint Caladrax. Yeah, right.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Caladrax is sweet though. It's just right there on the bookshelf. Oh.
Yep. Man, you should have shown. You need to flip your camera around. So
my camera's on like this big thing right now, so I can't. But I will show you it, because my game room also is not done. I have stuff up there, but it's gonna change. I just got 2 new bookshelves, people, from IKEA, and they're the 8 cube Calyx ones. It's white. It's real nice. You can see it on my Discord. But but yeah, so right now we got Caladrax on the top, and I've got like non-gaming stuff up there that just has to go. Like a car. I've got sports stuff up there.
It's got to go. It's got any Lions related gear.
I do have an old Roy Williams bobblehead from like 2005 up there that I got at a Lions game, and I've got a Mo Wagner signed Michigan basketball, a Ford Mustang 2000 Cobra R, because I had a 2003 Mustang red, and it looked like the Cobra R because I got the hood and I had the bumper because I was a dumb kid, and I just did that. So anyways, way too much information for this. But yeah, guys, we would love to see you around, and help us come up with some fun topics in the future, whether you got some questions or whatever. So we're gonna, like I said, review other games and all that good stuff, and you're gonna get completely different perspectives. So and I'm not even a new school gamer. I'm sorry, Bill. I don't identify that way. I'm somewhere in the middle.
So I think that I am too, right? Like if I were truly old school, I would play nothing after 3, third edition, right? Like, so yeah.
There's a lot of people like that. So
yeah.
So with that, guys, I am Juice. This is Bill. Sayonara. I'd say game on, but that's like the Master of the Game tagline.
Play and let play. I think
play and let play. Right? There you go. That's a great one.
Or make your persuasion check. Hashtag persuasion check. Yeah. Right.
There you go. Right. Hashtag persuasion check. I like it. We'll figure it out. We'll get this down after a couple episodes.
It'll be fine. Play in the meantime. Play and let play. So.
Play and let play is a good one. So adios, guys. That was